Chapter 1405. Fang Qingshan wanted to give it his all in one go. Great minds think alike in the tribulation of Tao. Therefore, Fang Qingshan rode the timeless arc and broke through the heavenly thunder tribulation. The Tao tribulation descended with 9 waves of lightning. When the two collided, the power that erupted was unimaginable. How strong was the sky ship? When a massive body of the ship slammed forward with all its might, the power that erupted was immeasurable. Coupled with the sharpness of the chaotic demonic horn, even a top-notch second-grade defensive treasure would find it hard to defend against it. But what about the Tao tribulation? Even an ordinary 6-9 Tao tribulation could put those top geniuses on the brink of death, let alone a mutated 6-9 Tao tribulation. Moreover, the 9 waves were so powerful that many late-stage immortal realm experts would not be able to withstand it, let alone primordial chaos experts. This was also why the protective array of the tribulation realm had not been used at all. Even the world itself had collapsed, and the higher-ups of the Tao sect had to take action to maintain it. This collision was earth-shattering and heaven-shattering. This collision was like a clear sky after the rain. Crack! Even though the timeless arc was at the supreme level, and it was a mutated one at that, under this collision, the divine light on it began to dim at a speed visible to the naked eye. Countless runes collapsed on the spot, and the restrictions within it continued to shatter. A ferocious shattering sound could be heard. At this moment, the lightning-gathering pagoda rumbled continuously, exerting its efficiency to 200%. It did its best to devour power, convert it into eternal divine power, and transport it to various parts of the timeless arc through the eternal lightning pool. While strengthening the chaos demonic horn, the timeless arc, and other timeless arc units, he also repaired the parts of the timeless arc that had been damaged by the lightning. When the timeless arc was damaged, Fang Qingshan, as the host of the timeless arc, naturally could not escape the backlash. Puff! For a moment, Fang Qingshan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He trembled violently, and when he opened his mouth, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned as white as a sheet. If he wanted to repair the damage to the timeless arc in Fang Qingshan's body, it would take him tens of thousands of years to do so with just himself and his treasures. Although the price paid was huge, it was worth it. It was because the tribulation clouds were directly pierced through. Meanwhile, the creatures produced by the 9 waves of lightning, the tens of thousands of creatures that gathered together, naturally forming all types of great formations, similarly released clear sounds, turning into countless fragments. Cauldron refines the heavens and earth, devour. Even though the tribulation cloud had been broken and the lightning had dispersed, Fang Qingshan didn't stop. He endured the pain and took out the cauldron of heaven and earth once more. The reason for this was naturally because the attributes of Fang Qingshan's Pishio had erupted. Thieves never leave empty-handed. The sky is 1 meter high. Previously, he was able to use the thunder tribulation to temper his body. Now that the thunder tribulation was no longer a threat, he naturally would not let the power of the lightning dissipate on its own. Naturally, he had to take everything. Although the lightning had been destroyed by the timeless arc, its power had been reduced to less than 10%. However, even the remaining power was enough to make these tribulation clouds and lightning not weaker than upper-level 2 heaven and earth treasures. For a moment, a huge cauldron with 3 legs and 2 handles appeared in the sky. Yin and Yang, the 5 elements, and the 8 trigrams were lifted and swallowed. All the lightning and tribulation clouds were swallowed in one breath. For a moment, the sky was clear after the rain. If it weren't for the mottled potholes and hideous cracks everywhere on the ground, which was maintained by the Tao sect's higher-ups, it would have looked extremely miserable. Those who didn't know would have thought that nothing had happened. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as the tribulation clouds and lightning were swept away, there was a sudden change in the next moment. Sure enough, in the sky, thousands of rays of light suddenly appeared. Big conches were blown, big drums were beaten, dragons and phoenixes were auspicious, and a golden boy and jade girl were enshrouded in purple light like water under the eaves, tinkling incessantly. Heavenly flowers were falling, and golden lotuses were emerging from the ground. This was heaven and earth celebrating the person who was going through the tribulation. Although talented people would be envied by heaven, and their power would multiply during the tribulation, once they passed it, they would also be protected and rewarded by heaven and earth. In fact, after the strange phenomenon, a milky white pillar of light that was extremely dense suddenly shot down. Boom! It charged straight at Fang Qingshan, instantly drowning Fang Qingshan within it. Fang Qingshan immediately let out a comfortable moan. The sweet came after the bitter, and it was time to reap the rewards. Wisdom bestowal. The lightning tribulation was a tribulation, but it was also fate. After the lightning tribulation, it was naturally creation. At this moment, countless Tao Will sect disciples couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. It wasn't that they were inexperienced, but that the power of creation that descended on Fang Qingshan was too much. If the power of creation that they obtained after the tribulation was said to be a stream, a small river, or a lake, then what Fang Qingshan obtained was a blue ocean. For a moment, the entire tribulation realm was filled with the power of creation. The onlookers couldn't wait to beat up the tycoon, divide the land, and secretly keep a share. Not to mention the disciples. Even many elders couldn't wait to get a share. After all, the power of creation was bestowed by the great Tao. Even for them, it was of great help. Not to mention the benefits to cultivation, just the ability to heal internal injuries and replenish one's foundation was enough to make people salivate. Unfortunately, the power of creation had an owner. It was also exclusive. Even if Fang Qingshan couldn't absorb it, they couldn't even think about getting a trace of it. Putting all this aside, Fang Qingshan had been waiting for this moment for a long time. After the power of creation entered his body, Fang Qingshan immediately felt that the surrounding heaven-earth Yuan Qi and even the heaven-earth Tao runes were completely open to him. It was as if there was nothing hidden at this moment. It was completely exposed in front of him. Although it couldn't compare to the eternal blessing or the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture, it was more than 10 times more effective than leaning against the Bodhi tree, sitting on the enlightenment futon, drinking mixed element spiritual liquid, burning the great Tao congealing incense, and striking the heavenly melody bell. As the power of creation entered his body, Fang Qingshan had used the lightning tribulation to temper his body, mystiques, spiritual power, primordial spirit, laws, and true spirit. However, the damage caused by the backlash from the timeless arc recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. After that, it was his cultivation level. Because he was bathed in the power of creation, Fang Qingshan's primordial spirit was especially clear. His brain capacity was expanding, and his circulation speed was increasing rapidly. The Great Tao Green Lotus visualization diagrams, 34th grade, bloomed completely. The 35th grade and even the 36th grade also appeared. At this moment, Fang Qingshan was sitting on the ground, his hands forming the eternal seal. His mind was visualizing the Great Tao Green Lotus visualization diagram, and his body was circulating the immortal chapter. His whole body turned into a black hole, swallowing the surrounding power of creation like a tide. Then, he didn't need to circulate it too much. It was as if these things were originally his origin power. In the most perfect and fastest manner, they became a part of his body. Then, Fang Qingshan's cultivation level rose steadily. Peak primordial chaos. Beginner immortal realm. Early immortal realm. Early immortal realm. Middle immortal realm. Peak immortal realm. Late immortal realm. Chapter 1406. In less than an hour, Fang Qingshan's cultivation rose and naturally reached the late stage of immortal realm. The speed was too fast. It was unstoppable. It was so fast that it was unacceptable. It was as if there was no bottleneck at all. It was as easy as drinking water and eating. It was amazing. It was unbelievable. Not to mention the bottleneck. It was more like Fang Qingshan's cultivation had always been at this level. It was just sealed before, and now the seal was opened. Everyone had expected that after Fang Qingshan passed such a Tao tribulation, Fang Qingshan's improvement would be amazing after seeing the power of creation that filled the whole world. However, they still underestimated Fang Qingshan's creation opportunity. They didn't expect that he would reach the peak late stage of Immortal Realm. Yes, after breaking through to the late stage of Immortal Realm, Fang Qingshan's cultivation did not stop, but continued to improve. Looking at the power of creation that filled the world, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Is he going to break through to the God Emperor realm directly? Everyone thought to themselves as their eyes emitted a red light. Fortunately, such a heaven-defying thing did not happen. Although there was still a lot of power of creation left, he only used 10 to 20% of it to improve his cultivation. Even so, it had pushed Fang Qingshan's cultivation level directly from the peak of the primordial chaos to the peak of the late-stage Immortal Realm. He had almost crossed a major realm and reached the peak of the Immortal Realm, catching up with Jiang Overlord. This was something that no one had expected. Even Fang Qingshan found it unbelievable. After all, Mosquito Daoran had also passed a top-level Thunder Tribulation. Although it was only 5 Dao Tribulations, his cultivation had just broken through to the middle stage of Immortal Realm. No one had expected that he would directly break through to the peak late stage of Immortal Realm. He was only one step away from the peak Immortal Realm. Such a breakthrough was rare in the past and present. It was already amazing for an ordinary person to break through to the middle stage, but he had forcibly reached the peak late stage of Immortal Realm. In fact, after thinking about it carefully, although it was shocking, such a result was also expected. First of all, although they were all top-level Dao tribulations, Fang Qingshan had passed the most top-level Immortal Dao tribulation, the Immortal Dao tribulation, the Blessed Buddhist Saint's Son, and the other top-level geniuses in the myriad heavens and realms, such as Tian Xie and Blessed Buddhist Saint's Son, could not compare. In fact, it was even slightly inferior. Secondly, the foundation he laid when he was at the primordial chaos realm was too solid. Not only did he experience the blessing of eternity, the eternal divine marrow was also deposited in his spine. He even created the immortal chapter of the Heavens Dao verification technique that was not inferior to the 100 Realms technique. He even broke through the limits, traveled the long river of history, and listened to the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Dao lecture. Moreover, before he had broken through, everything of his had become the immortal realm. It was like Fang Qingshan had broken through from the early stage of Immortal Realm. During the tribulation, he even borrowed the power of lightning to temper himself. In addition, he also had the purple title of Mixed Elements. As mentioned before, a purple title, especially a top-notch purple title like Fang Qingshan's, was also known as an Overlord title. Although the heavens were jealous, they were also blessed by the heavens. Once they survived the tribulation, the great Tao would naturally not be stingy with its rewards. Therefore, it was understandable that he had improved so much. Moreover, not only did his cultivation experience a huge leap, but everything else had undergone a qualitative leap. In terms of the physical body, as Fang Qingshan was the first to temper his physical body was also the first to break through its limits and metamorphose into a Tier 2 supreme treasure. Although the next few lightning tribulations did not focus on the physical body, it did not mean that the physical body was completely isolated. When he executed his battle techniques, he missed out on numinous treasures and mystic abilities. The remaining lightning that landed on his body was also constantly being tempered. Therefore, the body had actually been tempered from the beginning to the end, and it was the part that had been tempered the most. Now, the creation infusion body. The benefits that the body received were not any weaker than the primordial spirit and cultivation. Although the effect of the lightning tempering body was obvious, it was obvious that such a forceful method of breaking and rebuilding would easily leave many internal injuries. This was like how mortals cultivated external techniques. Although they improved rapidly and were powerful at the beginning, at a certain point, the internal injuries would erupt like a mountain collapsing, and they would be weakened instantly. Fortunately, With the power of creation, these internal injuries were repaired one by one. His body had also reached the early stage of upper level 2. Although it did not seem to be comparable to his cultivation, it should be known that the Tao of body refinement made him invincible in the same realm, and he could even challenge those at a higher level. Then there was the supernatural powers. Because of the power of lightning, the supernatural powers did not receive a perfect tempering, and they were even damaged. Their power had only increased by around 5 levels, and they had yet to reach the peak of transformation. However, under the support of the power of creation, they had all improved, and all of them had transformed into immortal-level supernatural powers. It was the same for the supernatural power, not to mention the supernatural power that had increased due to cultivation. Even if the supernatural power that had increased due to cultivation was included compared to other late-stage or peak immortal realm experts, such as Jiang Bawang, who had yet to reach the Divine Emperor level, Fang Qingshan's supernatural power was still one level higher. More importantly, such a large and comprehensive growth did not have any hidden dangers. The process of his cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds and transforming continuously was something that most people could not even imagine under normal circumstances. Cultivation was a process of one step at a time. But now, under the enlightenment of heaven and earth, this process had been completely overturned. However, there were no hidden dangers, and he could improve unscrupulously. It was like 1,000 years in an instant. During the process of cultivation, his comprehension of power and Tao aura would not have any problems, and they would appear clearly in his mind. Just like the eternal blessing, these were like the accumulation of Fang Qingshan's cultivation over a long period of time. It was just that they were sealed in his body. Now that the seal had been opened, it would not affect his foundation. Instead, it would strengthen his foundation. This was also the reason why those god emperors were jealous. Body, supernatural power, primordial spirit, cultivation, realm, willpower, supernatural powers, divine law. Even after everything had been improved, it was still not the end. This time, Fang Qingshan's tribulation was too powerful. The more he had paid, the more he would receive. Therefore, although every aspect had been improved, and it was a qualitative leap, the power of creation that filled the entire tribulation realm had not been consumed much. He had used 10 to 20% of it to improve his cultivation, to repair his hidden injuries, and to improve his supernatural power, supernatural powers, primordial spirit, and body. In total, he had not consumed half of it. There was still a lot of power of creation left, so he naturally would not waste it. If he did not use it or did not consume it in time, when the time was up, it would be taken back by heaven and earth. He would not have the chance to collect it. Otherwise, did you think that those people who were drooling over it would not take a share of it? Therefore, his cultivation or body had been improved to the point where it could not be improved anymore. Those external forces were also improving. Chapter 1407. The so-called external force, naturally referred to numinous treasures. The first to bear the brunt was the natal numinous treasure, the reincarnation mirror. This treasure was originally a connate cardinal treasure formed from the combination of the reincarnation mirror, the Kunlun mirror, and the clear sky mirror. As Fang Qingshan used the reincarnation nomological laws, reincarnation Tao runes, and various reincarnation attribute, life and death attribute, and space-time attribute treasures to constantly refine it. It gradually broke through to the peak of level 1. With the help of the power of creation, it naturally transformed into a level 2 cardinal treasure. Although it was still somewhat incompatible with Fang Qingshan's own cultivation level, as long as he broke through the big shackles, it would be much easier to transform the small realms. In addition to the natal numinous treasure, the timeless arc was naturally also transforming. After colliding head-on with the last thunder tribulation, the 9 waves of the combined thunder tribulation, the timeless arc had also suffered great damage. Although the timeless arc's eternal divine power was constantly repairing it, it was only on the surface. To truly repair it completely, it would require countless treasures and tens of thousands of years of cultivation. However, With the God-given power of creation, it was completely recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye and was also being tempered. Among the eternal divine furnace units, the cosmic cauldron, the shocking thunder flag, and the treasurefall coin, which were also top-notch first-class cardinal treasures like the reincarnation mirror, had also entered level 2. After colliding with the thunder tribulation, the passing water lamp, and the great void divine armor had all improved. Of course, in addition to the timeless arc and the reincarnation mirror, the all-heaven chessboard had also gained a lot of benefits. However, his breakthrough didn't consume any natural treasures, but his destiny. The power of creation wasn't completely useless, but compared to the mirror of samsara and the eternal heavenly vessel, it was much less. Speaking of the light from providence, although it was not as much as the power of creation, it was still quite a lot. It should be known that Fang Qingshan had directly broken through from the peak primordial chaos to the peak late-stage immortal realm. It was self-evident how much his progress and the increase in his light from providence was. In addition, because of this tribulation, the higher-ups of the Dao Will sect had paid close attention to him, and they had already regarded him as a key person to support. Although he was not the leader of a resurgence, he was still a candidate for the God Emperor, an existence equivalent to a saint. With the Dao Will sect's providence tilting towards him, even if he only got a small share of it, the benefits he would obtain would not be less than his cultivation breakthrough. The other reason was the support from the title tower. Fang Qingshan had the purple emperor-level title. He was favored by providence and had the power of heaven and earth. Now that he had broken through to the immortal realm, even though he hadn't taken the test yet, due to the 6-9 Dao calamity, even if he couldn't compare to immortal origin, he would at least be an ordinary purple immortal title. With all these added together, the luck chi surged, and the celestial chessboard naturally rose to a new height. It was enough for him to open up a passageway to several chaos worlds. In this way, not only would it be convenient for Fang Qingshan to cultivate the immortal chapter of the All Heavens Dao verification technique, which was based on the Myriad Worlds technique, but it would also be convenient for him to collect resources. Boom! There was a loud noise, but the time limit of the Great Dao's reward had passed. In the blink of an eye, everything happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. From the arrival of the power of creation, to Fang Qingshan's rapid improvement in all aspects, to now, when a heavenly chime sounded, the power of creation that he hadn't had time to devour receded like the tide. Everything happened in a flash. Seeing that at least 20 to 30% of the power of creation had been wasted, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but feel regret and heartache. It wasn't just him, even the onlookers felt the same way. It was a pity that this thing couldn't be stored, but it could be absorbed immediately. Although he had absorbed as much as he could, there was too much, and there were still leftovers. However, thinking of the benefits he had gained, Fang Qingshan was satisfied. After everything had dispersed, Jiang Mingyue, Jiang Overlord, and Yang Mei walked towards Fang Qingshan. Their faces were filled with joy and mixed feelings as they congratulated him. Junior Brother Fang / Senior Brother Fang, congratulations. Thank you. Although Fang Qingshan had a good temperament, he couldn't help but feel happy at this moment. It's true that his harvest this time was too big. Although he had thought that his progress would be greater than Mosquito Doran's, he thought that he was just at the peak of middle stage of immortal realm. Today, he had broken through to the peak of late stage of immortal realm, which was a pleasant surprise. However, besides the joy, he also had some worries. He was about to break through to the God Emperor realm, but he hadn't found the God Emperor chapter of the All Heavens Dao verification technique. It was still far away for the timeless arc to break through to the next level. Fortunately, these were the worries of happiness. In the past, Brother Fang's cultivation base was much lower than mine. But now, you've surpassed me. It's true that the new generation excels the old. Each wave is stronger than the previous one. Seeing the high-spirited Fang Qingshan, the three of them were happy for him. However, Yang Mei and Jiang Baowang had mixed feelings, especially for Yang Mei. In the past, in order to deal with Hong Jun, Fang Qingshan had specially asked him for help. Yang Mei had only helped him because of his great potential and had invested in him in advance. Although he didn't look down on Fang Qingshan, he also felt that it was a senior helping a junior. However, he hadn't expected Fang Qingshan's cultivation base to rise so quickly. Although he had already been mentally prepared when he was being chased after leaving the Shang Chaos world, he had still relied on the eternal heavenly vessel. And now, Fang Qingshan's cultivation base had surpassed him in all aspects. How could he not feel complicated? Not only Yang Mei, but Zhang Baowang also felt the same. Good fella, once he broke through, he almost caught up with me. If I hadn't obtained the Storm Sword token from my little sister and listened to the Storm Sword Emperor's sermon, my cultivation base would have been on the verge of breaking through. I'm afraid I would have been overtaken by Fang Qingshan. This wasn't a good feeling. Just look at Yang Mei. He was surpassed by someone who was once inferior to him. Moreover, it was the kind of person who couldn't catch up no matter how hard he tried. There was no need to mention the sour feeling in his heart. Just as Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, and the others were exchanging greetings, the disciples and direct disciples of the inner sect surrounded them. There were men and women, old and young, but their cultivation bases were all above the immortal realm. As for the higher-ups of the Tao, sect, the sect leader, the supreme elder, and the elders, they didn't surround them. Firstly, Fang Qingshan was busy and they didn't want to disturb the mood of the crowd. Secondly, they weren't in a hurry. They could talk to him after the inner sect disciple competition. This is... Fang Qingshan was talking to Zhang Baowang when he suddenly raised his head. He saw the space split open and a figure materialized. It turned into a young cultivator wearing a purple gold crown and dragon robe. His face was angular and his eyes shone with a pale golden luster. Greetings, Senior Brother Jiang. The person who came had a deep majesty, but it was somewhat different from Zhang Baowang's domineering aura. It seemed that he cultivated the Tao of the Emperor. He first bowed to Zhang Baowang, then turned his head and looked at Fang Qingshan with sparkling eyes. I didn't expect there to be a genius like Junior Brother in the inner sect. Congratulations. Chapter 1408. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he heard the words of the person who had come. Although this person didn't seem to have ill intentions, there was a sense of superiority and arrogance in his words. Just as he was about to say something, another voice rang out. That's right. Junior Brother Fang's breakthrough has surpassed all of us. Following that, several more people walked up to the stage one after another. Some of them were as bright as the pine trees on a mountain. The wind and snow couldn't force them to bow down. Some of them had their hair tied up in a bun and wore white Taoist robes. In their arms was a scorch-tailed zither. Although they were women, they were completely different from Jiang Overlord. They were like phoenixes flying in the 9 heavens. Some of them carried a big bow on their back and wore a beast robe, revealing their slender arms like barbarians. All of them were like dragons, but they were not the only ones. However, all of them had a majestic aura that suppressed the surroundings. They were like a towering mountain that couldn't be climbed or a boundless ocean. They were so deep that people couldn't breathe. As these people came up, they seemed to draw a circle around them. The other disciples, even if they were in the middle or late immortal realm, subconsciously stopped and didn't dare to take another step forward. Yes, Junior Brother doesn't fly after entering the sect, but he soars to the sky. He doesn't usually show off, but he amazes the world with a single brilliant feat. Eldest Senior Brother has been in seclusion for many years. Second Senior Brother is also about to break through. Now, there's someone like Junior Brother. It's really stressful. Not bad, not bad. I thought that after Eldest Senior Brother and Senior Brother Jiang broke through, we could also get another spot. We could even compete for the position of the eldest direct disciple. I didn't expect that Junior Brother Fang would appear out of nowhere. It's really worrying. These people were talking one after another. Fang Qingshan couldn't get a word in edgewise. Although they weren't full of resentment, they were full of probing. While they were talking, one by one, they pressed their aura towards Fang Qingshan as if they wanted to give him a show of strength. All right, it's our first time meeting each other. Let me introduce you. Against this group of people, Fang Qingshan naturally did not want to be outdone. Though he had just broken through, and his cultivation level was not as high as this group of people, he did not show any signs of weakness in terms of aura. Fighting against this group of people alone, he was not at a disadvantage at all. After a while, the aura grew stronger and stronger, to the point that the others were forced to retreat. Jiang Overlord chuckled and took a step forward, separating the two sides. He knew that even though Fang Qingshan wasn't a bookworm after joining the sect, he didn't know much about the people in the sect. Furthermore, many of them were away from home all year round. If not for the recent inter-disciple competition, they might not have returned. It was the first time they met, and Fang Qingshan's performance was so strong that it was an eyesore. The others didn't want to suppress him. They just wanted to show that they weren't easy to deal with. Secondly, they were excited to see him. After all, it was rare to find an opponent. However, today was the first time they met, and Fang Qingshan had just completed his heavenly tribulation. Moreover, this wasn't the place for them to make a move. There was still a long way to go. Therefore, Jiang Overlord separated them and introduced them. The first is junior brother Xinyuan Ziwei, who is ranked 3rd among the Dao sect's true disciples. The one carrying the zither is junior sister Feng Tianwu, who is ranked 9th among the Dao sect's true disciples. The one who looks like a barbarian is junior brother Yumantang, who is ranked 6th among the Dao sect's true disciples. The one who looks like a barbarian is junior brother Shurgandang, who is ranked 4th among the Dao sect's true disciples. This one, as Jiang Overlord introduced them one by one, Fang Qingshan got to know these people. Apart from the first true disciple who was in closed-door cultivation, the top 10 true disciples were all present. As for Jiang Overlord, from the way he introduced these people, it was obvious that he was the second true disciple of the Dao sect. After introducing the group of true disciples, Jiang Overlord pointed at Fang Qingshan and said, "I won't introduce him too much. After my little sister and I introduced him, he's the new inner sect disciple, the unparalleled genius Fang Qingshan, junior brother Fang." Of course not. Just based on today's thunder tribulation, I'm afraid junior brother Fang's name will soon spread throughout the void. Yes. With such an outstanding talent like junior brother Fang joining the Dao sect, it gives us pressure and also adds glory to the sect. We'll wait for junior brother's good news on the star. With the previous thunder tribulation, the probing confrontation, and Jiang Overlord's help, Fang Qingshan's rise was unstoppable. Of course, they also knew that Fang Qingshan's rise was unstoppable. Therefore, after exchanging a few words, these true disciples left. However, after they left, the others surrounded him again. There were true disciples and inner sect disciples, not for anything else but to become familiar with him. However, most of them were at the late-stage immortal realm. Jiang Overlord had been standing at the side. Firstly, it was to support him, and secondly, it was to introduce him. Phew! After a long while, these people finally dispersed. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but let out a long breath with lingering fear. He rubbed his stiff face. After all, he still had to stay in the Dao sect in the future. Moreover, these people also had good intentions and wanted to befriend him. Fang Qingshan wasn't someone who would keep people at arm's length. He had given them a papaya, and in return, Qiangyao, so he naturally wouldn't treat them coldly. However, it had been many years since he had encountered such a lively scene. For a moment, he wasn't used to it. Looking at Fang Qingshan's expression, Jiang Overlord burst out, laughing uncontrollably. All right, Jiang Mingyue looked at her sister reproachfully and comforted her. This is also because senior brother Fang has shocked them too much. Moreover, this is the first time you've appeared in public. It won't happen again in the future. Fang Qingshan nodded. He was well aware of this. If this happened every time, he would not put himself at a disadvantage for the sake of others. All right, let's go back and rest for a while. The inner sanctum competition is about to begin. Even after Fang Qingshan and the others left, the tribulation realm didn't quiet down. After being repaired by a few Dao sect powerhouses, the inner and outer sanctum disciples started to apply for tribulation transcendence one after another. It was all because the inner sanctum competition was approaching and they were stimulated by Fang Qing Shan. It's a top-notch immortal tribulation. Yes, and it's the 6-9 Tao tribulation of the top-notch immortal tribulation. It's a variant Tao tribulation of the 6-9 Tao tribulation. Just the power of creation that fills this world is enough to make one sigh in admiration. I would be satisfied if I could get 1/10 of it during my tribulation transcendence. 1/10? Hee. Among all the immortal experts in the Tao sect, there aren't many who get more than 1/100th of the power of creation during their tribulation transcendence, let alone 1/10. The entire Tao sect was in an uproar. Fang Qing Shan had almost become the headline. Wherever he went, he could hear people talking about him. It was as if he would fall behind if he didn't say a few words. Chapter 1409. The inter-sect competition was a grand event for the Tao sect. It was even a grand event for the surrounding worlds. The reason for this was that the primordial chaos realm had just gained the right to roam the void and was at the bottom. Once one became a god emperor, they would become a powerhouse and would not fight easily. Only undying existences were the cornerstone, the main force. They could see through a sect's strength as well as a sect's future. Therefore, many people were trying their best to shine in the inter-disciple competition. Even if it wasn't for the top 10, the direct promotion to a core disciple, or the generous rewards from the sect, just the chance to spar with the geniuses, make a name for themselves, and gain the favor of the sect was enough to move many people. Therefore, the entire Tao sect would be very lively every time the inter-sect competition was held. But this time, it was especially lively. After all, Fang Qing Shan was a little legendary. He had just joined the sect, but he was the second direct disciple and was recommended by Jiang Overlord, who was about to become a god emperor. He was even valued by Elders A of the Scripture Pavilion and participated in the Tao lecture of the Sword Emperor of the Storm. Especially when he was undergoing the immortal tribulation, he was an unparalleled existence in the boundless void. I've been waiting for the inter-sect competition for a long time. It really didn't disappoint me. Yeah, this year's inter-sect competition is going to be interesting. It's not just the inter-sect competition. Do you know Senior Brother Jiang, Overlord, and Eldest Senior Brother? Why? I heard that Senior Brother Jiang, Overlord, went to participate in the Tao lecture of the Sword Emperor of the Storm. What? Doesn't that mean he's about to break through? Yeah. As for Eldest Senior Brother, he's been in seclusion for 3,000 years. I'm afraid it's time for him to break through. God Emperors, and 2 God Emperors at that. God bless our Tao sect. It seems like we're really going to rise again. Yeah. Not to mention them, Fang Qing Shan and the other direct disciples. Just look at Fan Tianxing, Feng Du, Chen Pianpian, and the others in the inter-sect. Which one of them isn't famous? Yeah, I heard that many of them have reached the middle or late immortal realm and are on the verge of reaching the divine emperor realm. They aren't any worse than the true disciples. I heard that most of them are highly valued by the higher-ups of our Tao sect. The divine emperor elders have already reserved their disciples in advance. That's right. The reason why they didn't advance to the core disciple realm in advance is because of this day. Looks like I need to work hard as well. Even if I can't catch up to Fang Qing Shan and the others, I should at least be able to catch up to them. That's right. Just as the higher-ups of the Tao sect had predicted, Fang Qing Shan's appearance was like a catalyst. There was pressure, and there were immortal existences in the inter-sect. One by one, they returned to their own dojo and meditated, striving to be in the best condition for the inter-sect competition. When primordial chaos, outer sect, and inter-sect disciples were on the verge of breaking through, they would directly apply for tribulation transcendence. They were still a little far from Fang Qing Shan and the others. However, after experiencing Fang Qing Shan's tribulation transcendence and seeing the powerful and imposing true disciples in the inter-sect who were on the verge of reaching the divine emperor realm, all of them were naturally excited. Every one of them seemed to be on steroids. As they imagined themselves catching up to them in the future, they immediately turned around and went back to cultivate in seclusion. Although this state might not last for long, it was already a pleasant surprise for the higher-ups of the Dao sect. As a result, they were even more satisfied with Fang Qingshan. Not only was he talented, but he also had such an effect. This made them feel very comforted. However, this was only the discussion within the Dao sect. The moment Fang Qingshan succeeded in tribulation transcendence, the news spread with the Dao chaotic world as the center and spread further and further. Hundreds of millions of worlds in the vicinity knew of Fang Qingshan. Just as Xinyuan Ziwei and the others had said earlier, Fang Qingshan was someone who had remained silent for 10 years and became famous overnight. Although Fang Qingshan was only an inner sect disciple and had only undergone tribulation transcendence in the Dao sect, this tribulation transcendence was too sharp. Unlike the previous title pagoda, where only Jiang, Overlord, and a few others knew about it, the entire Dao sect knew about it now. Naturally, the news could not be kept a secret. It was not that the Dao sect did not want to keep it secret, but there were all kinds of birds in a big forest. Although the Dao sect was united, it could not guarantee that there would be spies from others. However, although the people in the outside world were amazed, the higher-ups' initial view of Fang Qingshan was still rather vague. Dao sect, star-shifting sea. There was a huge island in the middle that looked like a small continent. It had Dao runes, spirit chi, and treasures in all aspects. It could be said to be the best in the entire inner sect. This was the residence of the Dao sect's eldest inner sect disciple. Today, the top inner sect disciples of the past were all gathered here. Although they were all gathered together, the atmosphere was somewhat depressing. The reason for this was naturally attributed to Fang Qingshan. However, the top inner sect disciples were gathered together at this moment and seemed somewhat silent. In comparison, the outside world's understanding of Fang Qingshan was not comprehensive. The primordial chaos realm disciples were far from Fang Qingshan. Although the pressure on the true disciples was great, Fang Qingshan had not advanced yet. The ones who were really unable to bear it were the top inner sect disciples. This was because they wanted to fight for the top 10 in the inner sect competition. Among them, there was a charming young lady who looked very weak, but no one dared to look down on her. There was also a tall man who was somewhat similar to Shurgandang, but he had a different personality. There were rich young masters, scholars, young men who showed off their abilities, and old men who looked like they had white hair and a ruddy complexion. Some people were full of righteousness, standing upright like orchids and jade trees, and their smiles were like the bright moon. There were also people who had black eyebrows, a face like peach petals, and long and narrow eyes, giving off an indescribable sense of femininity. There were not many people in this group, only about a dozen or so. Their cultivation level was at the late stage immortal realm, and they were stronger than the few true disciples. Previously, they had not advanced to the true disciple rank, not because they did not want to, but because they wanted to amaze the world with a brilliant feat and earn more benefits. After all, the top 10 inner sect disciples would advance to the true disciple rank directly. There were all kinds of benefits and rewards that many ordinary divine emperor elders would be jealous of. However, they did not expect that someone would appear out of nowhere. Everyone was naturally under great pressure. Every time there is a big competition, a dark horse will appear. I did not expect the dark horse to appear this time to be so dark. Yes, who would have thought that would be such a newcomer? It seems that one of the top 10 inner sect competition has already been booked in advance. I think it's not just the top 10. I'm afraid it's the top 3, or even the first place. Actually, Fang Qingshan is not scary. No matter how strong he is just one person. The ones that we really need to pay attention to are the other dark horses. Who cares about him? We will deal with it when it comes. Although the dark horse is dark, we still need to see the bottom. We're not easy to deal with. Yes. Who will win and who will lose will only be known after a real battle in the arena. Chapter 14:10. Boundless Void. Usually, the sky was high and the sea was wide. It was quiet and deep, appearing especially mysterious and vast. Occasionally, there would be a flash of light, but it was like a meteor streaking across the sky. It was like the chirping of cicadas in the forest, the chirping of birds in the mountains, and the quietness of the void. Recently, however, there was a slight change. At least, with the Tao will sect as the center, the boundless void within a radius of billions of miles was bustling. It was like a market, with countless spaceships of all sizes competing and competing. However, a black shadow slowly floated over from afar. It seemed slow but was actually fast, covering the sky and emitting a majestic aura. Those black shadows were none other than the large void spaceships. In particular, a few of them were like the ships of kings. Compared to Jiang Overlord's void spaceship, not only were they larger, but they were also incomparable in terms of luxury. When not moving, auspicious light lingered, but wherever they moved, a murderous aura filled the air. After all, Jiang Overlord's spaceship was of mid-grade, and it was suitable for one person. It was small and exquisite, easy to control. He was not a person who liked luxury. Other than traveling, void spaceships were also used for escaping. Therefore, they were not eye-catching. Being too ostentatious was not a good thing to travel in the void. However, the spaceships before him were different. First of all, they were of high grade and were large spaceships. Generally speaking, such spaceships were the collective type, and their strategic resources were naturally huge. Secondly, they were all representing their respective sects to participate in the Tao will Sect's inner sanctum competition. Naturally, they had to show off, lest they tarnish their own prestige and reputation. Of course, apart from the void spaceships, some of these spaceships were timeless arcs. They had a common destination, and that was the Tao will Sect. The reason they came to the Tao will Sect was naturally for the Tao will Sect's inner sanctum competition. One was to observe the ceremony, and the other was to investigate. Observing the ceremony was easy. Usually, when something big or important happened, they liked to invite some witnesses. This was considered a tradition. In the past, countless sects and itinerant cultivators from hundreds of millions of worlds would come to participate in the Tao will Sect's intersect competition. However, this time, there seemed to be more people and the quality was higher. As for the investigation, it was done by some people who harbored ill intentions. Or rather, it could not be said that they harbored ill intentions, but they had ulterior motives. They wanted to see the strength of the Tao will Sect so that they could adjust their attitude towards the Tao will Sect. On the other hand, the Tao will Sect was flexing its muscles. In fact, this was normal. After all, the major forces on the sovereign ranking wouldn't easily start a war even if they had a grudge against each other. They were afraid that history would repeat itself, like the incident between the Incorpse Gate and the Umbra Gate. After all, the gap between them wasn't that big. If it wasn't for the huge gap in ranking, even if they could kill someone weaker than them, they would probably lose a mouthful of teeth. Most importantly, when a sandpiper and a clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Who didn't have a few enemies? No one wanted to take advantage of the other, so a strange balance was formed. But in the end, this was a world of profit, and tongues and teeth might fight. Therefore, it was inevitable that there would be conflicts between them. When there was a conflict, it naturally had to be resolved. Otherwise, the more it accumulated, the crazier it would become. To resolve it, there was no other way than a fight. It was fine if it was just a small conflict, but if it was a big problem, he naturally wanted to get rid of it once and for all. Therefore, in the infinite void, it was not popular to show one's enemy that they were weak. Although, there was a saying that one could pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. In a situation where they couldn't fight, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger would really turn them into a pig. Kind people would be bullied, and kind horses would be ridden. Therefore, there was a grand event like the Tao will Sect's inter-disciple competition. If others saw your strength, they would naturally think twice before they faced you in the future and wouldn't dare to act rashly. In the void, which was an unknown distance away from the Tao will Sect, a spaceship flew across the sky. It seemed to have crossed the infinite sea of bitterness and could reach the other side. It was completely black and emitted a cold luster. It was as if it was filled with coldness as the infinite void. As he moved, he seemed to have crossed an immeasurable amount of time and space, surpassing all kinds of spaceships in an instant. At the front of the spaceship, there was a giant flag with the word G written on it. Everywhere it went, all evils avoided it. When the other spaceships saw this spaceship, they all made way. Firstly, they were shrouded by the huge shadow of the spaceship. Its majestic aura was terrifying, as if they had been imprisoned. Secondly, it was too fast. If they got too close, they might get sucked into it. Most importantly, it represented a sect that was even more powerful than the Dao sect, the Martial Pole sect. Be it in terms of strength or heritage, the Martial Pole sect had an absolute advantage over the Dao sect. Moreover, the chaotic world that the Martial Pole sect governed was not adjacent to the chaotic world. Therefore, everyone was puzzled. After all, although the Dao sect's inter-disciple competition was a grand event nearby, it was nothing compared to the more powerful sects that were further away. Generally speaking, if sects that were not on good terms with one another were stronger than the other, the stronger sect would not attend gatherings where the weaker sects were. Therefore, when they saw the Martial Pole sect spaceship, the people on the other spaceships couldn't help but be excited. I didn't expect the Martial Pole sect to be here this time. Yeah, the Martial Pole sect is far more powerful than the Dao sect. I didn't expect them to be here for the Dao sect's inter-disciple competition. It's not just the Martial Pole sect. You probably didn't know that the Fluttering Snow Palace, the Eternal Heaven sect, and other major forces are here too. The Martial Pole sect's spaceship flew by. Along the way, the smaller forces near the Dao sect began to discuss. I haven't seen them participate in the past. Why are there so many major forces here today? Could it be that something unexpected has happened? At once, a worried atmosphere pervaded the air. As the saying goes, when the immortals fight, the mortals suffer. If something unforeseen happened and caused those big powers to fight, they would be implicated. After all, many of them were dependent on these major forces. When the big brothers fought, the underlings naturally couldn't stay out of it. Even if they weren't underlings, the possibility of them getting hurt was high. It was no wonder that everyone was worried. You're worrying too much. At the end of the day, there were still people who understood that a war wasn't easy to start and explained. If it was really a war between the major forces, there wouldn't be so many forces here. That's right, that's right. What's the reason? Isn't that simple? Haven't you heard about the recent rumors? Rumors? What rumors? You're really ignorant. Hearing this, the people who spoke earlier couldn't help but look surprised. Chapter 14:11. I've been in seclusion for some time and just came out today, so the first person who was surprised said apologetically and curiously. No wonder. Everyone nodded and said with a hint of enthusiasm, "Don't you know?" You don't know, but the Dao sect is really lucky this time. They got a disciple who went to the Blessed Fate Mountain to listen to the Sword Emperor of the Storm's sermon not long after he entered the sect. He's also the owner of the Eternal Sky ship. After passing the tribulation, he broke through the peak of mortal realm and almost reached the God Emperor realm. What? Broke through Deity Emperor? That's unbelievable. The person in seclusion was shocked when he heard this. The owner of the Timeless Ark, listening to the sermon at Fuyuan Mountain, was already enviable. Now, he almost broke through to Deity Emperor after just one tribulation. This was too shocking. This was nothing more than a rumor that was passed down from generation to generation. Fang Qingshan only broke through the peak late stage immortal realm, but the information was distorted after it was spread. Some said he almost broke through to Deity Emperor. Some said he had already reached Deity Emperor, and the most ridiculous one was that he had reached the peak of Deity Emperor. Although not many people believed the latter, it was enough to make people sigh. It wasn't as if they didn't have a solid foundation. The disciples in the top 30 of the sovereign ranking were all like that. However, even with their foundation and innate talent, it was extremely rare for them to break through an entire realm. Not only that, Fang Qingshan almost broke through to Deity Emperor. Do you know that the eldest direct disciple and second disciple of Dao sect are almost certain to break through to Deity Emperor? Another person added, "What? How is that possible? How is that impossible? Let's not talk about the eldest direct disciple. Second disciple Jiang, overlord, also went to Fuyuan Mountain to listen to the Sword Emperor of Storm's sermon. Sword Emperor of Storm's sermon? I see. Hearing this, everyone came to a sudden realization, and at the same time, they felt a wave of envy, jealousy, and hatred. Especially to the rogue cultivators and small forces, listening to the sermon at Fuyuan Mountain was a great opportunity. But such an opportunity had nothing to do with them. Instead, disciples of big forces like Fang Qingshan and Jiang Overlord actually participated. The strong got stronger, and the world was unfair. The rise of the Tao will seek strength is too fast, so it naturally aroused the vigilance of the other major forces. It's precisely because of this that it attracted several large sects to participate in the Tao will sects inter-sect competition. I didn't expect so many major events to happen in the outside world while I was in seclusion. The Tao will sect is about to produce several divine emperors, and various major forces are about to make their appearance. Such a grand event. I also want to go and watch. Me too. Some of the rogue cultivators and people from smaller forces revealed looks of yearning. Why did so many people want to watch the battle? It was very simple. Every single disciple of the Tao will sect possessed extraordinary natural talent and strength, and the battle between them would surely be very exciting. It would be an eye-opener and increase one's knowledge, and it would be something to brag about in the future. This was only one of the aspects. Another aspect was that if he could watch a battle between experts, it would be of great benefit to him as well. He could observe other people's usage of magical powers, various small tricks, on-the-spot reactions, and so on. These were all treasures. Moreover, with so many experts gathered together, if they were in a good mood and wanted to talk about the great Tao, it would be a great opportunity. Although there were no celestial emperors, and it wasn't as good as Blessed Fate Mountain, it was already something that these primordial immortals wished for. Even if they didn't talk about the great Tao, it was also a great opportunity for them to communicate with each other. They might even encounter one or two good items that could help them break through. Not to mention them, even the major sects and forces that were able to participate in the grand competition or the top rogue cultivators would bring their own disciples to participate. These disciples were all carefully selected and worthy of being nurtured. The purpose of watching the battle was the same. On one hand, it was to witness the strength of the Tao will sect's top disciples to motivate themselves and let them know that there was always someone better out there, and they shouldn't belittle themselves or be arrogant. On the other hand, it was to broaden their horizons. Therefore, every time the Tao will sect's inter-sect competition would attract many people to watch. Those who were qualified to participate revealed a superior look at this moment. Stop dreaming. The Tao will sect isn't a place that you can enter. Without a certain identity, status, and cultivation level, you can't even get close to the Tao chaotic world, let alone participate. Indeed, to the Tao will sect, the inter-sect competition was indeed a grand event. In the past, they weren't afraid of people coming to watch. On one hand, the Tao will sect's conduct was more down to earth, and they weren't as overbearing and arrogant to rogue cultivators and small forces like the other major forces. On the other hand, as mentioned earlier, they wanted to show off their muscles. Since they wanted to show off their muscles, they naturally needed more people to see them and spread the news. Especially after the death of the patriarch, the Tao will sect needed to maintain a high combat power at all times so that no one would hit them when they were down. However, this time was a little different. The Tao will sect didn't expect that after the news of Fang Qingshan passing the 6-9 immortal tribulation and breaking through a major realm, the Tao will sect's first and second direct disciples breaking through to the God Emperor realm would spread. It actually caused such a major chain reaction. The Martial Pole sect, Fluttering Snow Palace, Eternal Heaven sect, and other forces that were no weaker than the Tao will sect actually sent people over. When there were more people, there would naturally be a mix of good and bad people. In order to prevent accidents and to raise the level of the competition, the Tao will sect began to enforce martial law. Those without a certain identity, status, and cultivation could only watch from afar. They couldn't get close at all, just like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. Although it was breathtakingly beautiful, it couldn't be touched. Only those who accepted the invitation, or were famous upper-class sects or individuals were qualified to enter the Tao chaotic world to watch the competition. Although they couldn't watch the competition, they couldn't help but discuss it. Hee. The 6-9 Immortal Tribulation? I wonder if it's worthy of its name. Heavenly Diabolism and the Saint Buddha Saint also touched it. Hee. I hope the Tao sect won't disappoint me. A young man in a black robe stood alone at the edge of the flying vessel with a cold expression. He looked outside through the crystal window at the boundless void and the Tao sect in the distance. He was talking to himself, but no one could give him an answer. Senior brother, do you really know the famous Fangqing Shan of the Tao sect? Is he really that powerful? What does he look like? Why haven't I heard of him before? A flying vessel that wasn't any weaker than the Marshall Pole sect flew over slowly. A group of men and women in white robes stood at the bow of the ship. They exuded a cold aura. The men were handsome and the women were beautiful. Other than the difference in temperament, they seemed to be about the same age. At this moment, a playful woman in the crowd was questioning a man with a complicated expression. Chapter 14:12. However, the person who was being questioned wasn't someone else, but someone familiar to Fangqing Shan, an old friend. Although they had only met once, they had an agreement to have a duel in the future to discuss the Tao. Lang Qinli, Drifting Snow Palace's direct disciple. Yes, Lang Qinli had already become a direct disciple of Drifting Snow Palace. His cultivation had also broken through to the immortal realm, and it wasn't at the early stage of immortal realm, but the same as Mosquito Dowrin, middle stage immortal realm. Speaking of this, one had to mention Mosquito Dowrin. Logically speaking, if he was a primordial remnant beast, he shouldn't be any weaker than Fangqing Shan. Unfortunately, regardless of whether this was true or not, he had already been turned into a clone by Fangqing Shan, and his luck had been taken. Moreover, his advantage was that he had no bottlenecks in his cultivation, so Mosquito Dowrin had only broken through to the middle stage. However, this was already a rare occurrence in 10,000 years. And Lang Qinli could stand shoulder to shoulder with Mosquito Dowrin, so one could see that his talent, luck, and good fortune were all top-notch. And the person who questioned him was his junior apprentice sister. This group of people naturally came from Drifting Snow Palace. The two leading people looked like Lang Qinli's brother and sister, but they were actually old monsters. However, it couldn't be seen from the outside at all. It was a transformation, a supernatural ability, and no medicine. It wasn't intentional, but the Drifting Snow Palace's cultivation technique. Putting this aside for now, when Lang Qinli heard his junior apprentice sister's question, he felt the same way as Yang Mei. His heart was filled with complicated feelings. It wasn't just his junior apprentice sister who kept asking. The other brothers, sisters, and even the elders of the sect all had bright eyes as they listened attentively. At the same time, he also knew that part of the reason why the sect made such a big fuss this time was because of this old friend. Thus, Lang Qinli calmed himself down, cleared his throat, and slowly said, "Although I've only met Fang Daoist once, I already knew that he wasn't ordinary. Thus, when Brother Fang and I listened to the Tao at Fuyuan Mountain, we agreed that after we broke through, we would sit down and discuss the Tao to compete." At this point, he paused for a moment before continuing. "I didn't expect that I would misjudge him. I thought that he would be at the same level as me at most. Even if he was strong, he wouldn't be that strong. However, as the saying goes, a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. It's true that he has crossed the top-level immortal tribulation. Moreover, it's a mutated Tao tribulation. As for the rest, I don't know much." Wave after wave of people rushed over. Those who were similar to, or even stronger than the Tao sect were full of confidence. Although they were not arrogant and domineering, they were not afraid of anyone when they were outside. As for those slightly weaker factions, it was different. The leaders of those factions would instruct their disciples to take care of themselves. Once you're inside the Tao sect, all of you should restrain yourselves. Remember not to wander around, and don't get into conflict with the Tao sect's disciples. Since they couldn't compare to the Tao sect, shouldn't they be more cautious? Actually, there was no need for Zhang Xian to remind them. As long as one wasn't an arrogant person who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, they would understand this point. Pick a soft persimmon to pinch. Who would pinch a diamond? A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The Dao sect was still a top sect and was stronger than them. Although they wouldn't bully others, if someone bullied them, they wouldn't just let go. They would definitely kill the chicken to warn the monkey. If they got into a conflict with the Dao sect's disciples in the Dao sect's territory, they would have something on them. Even if they were to be killed, they wouldn't be able to avenge themselves. If they killed the Dao sect's disciples, the consequences would be even worse, and they might even bring disaster to the sect. Friends came from far. How could they not say it? The Dao sect didn't expect so many people to come this time. However, no matter what, whether they had good or bad intentions, as long as they didn't brazenly embarrass the sect, they were guests, and they wouldn't be rude. Therefore, from afar, the Dao sect sent out their outer disciples to clear the area and guide the guests. At the main entrance of the Dao sect, in front of the heavenly dimension, there were even important figures who came out to welcome the guests. For a moment, the surroundings of the entire Dao chaotic world were lit up. Tens of thousands of golden lights were rolling red, and thousands of auspicious auras were spewing purple mist. The long bridge was reclining, and the colorful red-crowned phoenix was circling in the air. The auspicious beast welcomed the door, and the golden-scaled nine-clawed dragon was roaring. Specks of golden light fell like condensed pearls, and it was majestic from top to bottom. It was majestic, and it surpassed the heavens. A dense aura filled the air and floated in all directions. Before it got close, there was an indescribable, awe-inspiring feeling. Even though the restrictions of the array formation had been retracted, one could still see that it was like a tiger fighting a dragon. It was extraordinary. Clang, clang, clang. Every time there were distinguished guests, the Dao chaotic world's heavenly dimension door would ring a clear bell. This was the warning bell of the Dao sect. It would only be rung on important occasions. For example, the Inner Sanctum Tournament, the breakthrough to the God Emperor realm, the invasion of foreign enemies, the arrival of distinguished guests, and so on. Now, it was naturally to welcome the distinguished guests. The higher the status of the guest, the more the bell would ring. For example, for those weaker than the Dao sect, the bell would ring from 1 to 9 times. For those that were similar to the Dao sect, the bell would ring from 9 to 18 times. For those that were better than the Dao sect, the bell would ring from 18 to 27 times. When the bell stopped ringing, layers of golden light and purple aura spread out like a blooming lotus. Celestial music lingered in the air, and a strange fragrance filled the air. Next, a group of people came out to welcome them, and the music was played. The golden boy and jade girl were lined up on both sides, holding a rui and an incense burner. They were solemn and respectful, orderly and orderly. Then, a few people in charge walked out. If it was weaker than the Dao sect, they would be welcomed by the welcoming elder and 2 ordinary direct disciples. If it was similar to the Dao sect, they would be welcomed by the elder with real power and 2 ordinary elders. There were also 2 top true disciples. If it was stronger than the Dao sect, they would be led by the vice sect leader, who would lead the elders with real power, ordinary elders, and 10 direct disciples. Different levels meant different levels. For a time, the welcoming bell of the Dao sect rang nonstop, and people would arrive from time to time. In the end, the group of golden boys and jade girls did not leave and stood on both sides of the heavenly dimensional gate. The welcoming elder and the ordinary direct disciples did the same. Only special distinguished guests, the vice sect leader, and the elders with real power would show themselves. Rumble. The sound of the arriving airships was endless, and all kinds of strange phenomena appeared one after another. There were fine and dense words outlining the magnificent scenes of prosperity. There were the words of Dao. There were thousands of miles of ice, thousands of miles of snow, thousands of years of history, mountains and rivers, battles against the heavens and earth, unparalleled killings, stars, sun, moon, scholars and commoners, etc. There were also people with solemn auras and sharp gazes. Some were handsome and thin, with drooping wings, some had snow-white hair, and some had long and narrow eyes. Some were dressed in strange clothes, some were monks, and some were demons. There were so many that came one after another. Chapter 14:13. So, it's Elder Jean from the Drifting Snow Palace. These are the disciples of your sect, right? They are indeed outstanding. The arrival of the Martial Pole sect, Sky Martial Hall Master brings light to our humble Tao will sect. Our disciples are all brimming with vitality. No wonder they are so famous. Divine General Shui from the Eternal Heaven sect. It's been a long time. I still remember that the last time we met was 3,000 years ago. We must have a good chat this time. These distinguished guests were led to the guest pavilion by the Tao will sect's people and led to different courtyards according to their respective ranks. However, even the worst courtyard was built extraordinarily grand and magnificent, overflowing with light and vibrant colors. There were pictures of birds and beasts and colorful immortal spirits. The fragrance of sandalwood wafted through the air. Inside the door, there was a special restriction array that was filled with an indescribable power and emitted a hidden fragrance. Upon touching it, one's dermic power and yuan spirit would become lively and the fatigue from the journey would be swept away. This was naturally something like the soul concentration array and the soul concentration incense. The soul concentration array was easy to set up, even though it was difficult to set up unless one was an array formation expert. It also required the help of a special soul concentration wood. The soul concentration incense was even more difficult to refine. The most important thing was the consumables and raw materials. Even the lowest grade was of superior second grade. They could sense the changes in their dermic power and yuan spirit. It was mysterious and indescribable. Be it those weaker or stronger than the Tao sect, they couldn't help but be surprised. They sighed inwardly. As expected of the Tao sect, they had a deep foundation and were generous. Although they were silent for a while, they couldn't be underestimated. They were like a hidden dragon that would rise with the wind. As the competition approached, those who should come had already come. Those who couldn't come wouldn't come either. The Tao sect's disciples were all returning to their nests. At the same time, the heavenly dimensional door closed and the array was activated, preparing for a rainy day. Although they had already screened the participants beforehand, there were too many people here, and there was no knowing what was in a person's heart. It was better to be safe than sorry. Therefore, the Tao sect had sent out Tao soldiers to guard the place, and they would not withdraw until the competition ended. The veil of night descended, and the Tao chaotic world was even more bustling than usual. Firstly, it was because of the inner core competition and some disciples that had been completing assignments outside to earn Tao insight points, explore secrets, and search for fortuitous encounters had returned, and some had come out from closed-door cultivation. Once there were more people, it would naturally be bustling. Secondly, the disciples of other forces had come, so they had to stroll around the Tao sect. Everyone visited their relatives and friends and interacted with each other. Naturally, it was especially lively. However, for people like Fang Qingshan who were going to participate in the inter-disciple competition, the excitement belonged to others. They all stayed in their own dojos to cultivate in order to be in a better state for the upcoming battle tomorrow. Sect Grand Competition. This was not a small opportunity. There was no room for negligence. The Great Tao was fighting. It was fighting for providence and fortuitous opportunities with heaven and earth, fighting for resources with living beings, fighting for lifespan with time, and fighting for eternity with the Great Tao. In the Great Sect competition, there would be many geniuses at the same level as them. They would be able to learn from each other's strong points and learn from others. The sect would also give out rewards. The better one's ranking was, the more rewards they would receive. Moreover, compared to traveling the heavens and exploring, this reward was not only easier, but also less dangerous. Although cultivators were immortals and Buddhas, they were also mortals who valued fame and fortune. If one performed well, not only would the sect favor them with resources, but it would also spread far and wide. In addition, the disciples of the Tao sect were usually in a state of self-cultivation. Apart from entering the sect or breaking through to the next level, they would receive free techniques. Every once in a while, the elders would give them pointers. The rest of the time, they would have to rely on themselves. Without a teacher, if they wanted to ask questions, they could go to the Tao Palace and ask the elders. However, they would need Tao insight points. Therefore, the disciples of the Tao sect spent half their time on assignments to earn Tao insight points. However, if they performed well in the competition, they might be taken in as disciples by their teachers. Therefore, with the guidance and support of their teachers, their cultivation would naturally be smoother. Therefore, those who were interested in the Tao sect were especially serious. He had to show his best side and try his best to display 200% of his brilliance. The night passed quickly. At dawn, as the sun rose into the sky, its light and heat spread across the land. The sound of a bell ringing could be heard one after another. The entire Tao sect suddenly came to life. All the disciples of the Tao sect who wanted to participate in the competition gathered outside the Star Luo Sea. It was fine if they didn't pay attention to it usually, but at this moment, all the disciples were gathered together. Thousands of immortals gathered together, especially since they were all at the immortal realm. Their imposing manner was really shocking. At a glance, there was a dense mass of human figures, but each of them had their own brilliance. Each of them was as vast as the wind, but no one knew where they were going. They were floating in the air as if they were aloof from the world and ascending to immortality. A gentle breeze blew past, still carrying the chill from last night, but it couldn't blow away the heat in everyone's hearts. Seeing this scene, the disciples below the immortal realm looked proud. At the same time, they were a little envious and secretly made up their minds to appear in that group of people next time. Meanwhile, in the sky dome above, stars shone brilliantly. True inheritors, elders, and guests stood on them, looking down from above. When all the disciples had arrived, a bell rang in the sky. In the next moment, a 1,000-leaf lotus flower bloomed. This lotus looked like a lotus, but it wasn't. It was formed by thousands of Tao wheels. On the lotus platform, an old man with white eyebrows stained with frost sat motionlessly. He waved a horsetail whisk in his hand. His heavenly gates, auspicious cloud, rose and released endless light. Tens of thousands of golden lanterns and pearls hung down, jingling and resonating with the entire Tao chaotic world. This person was none other than the Tao sect master, Taoist Yi, a peak god emperor. Although he couldn't compare to the sword emperor of the storm from the god emperors that Fang Qingshan had seen, even the most powerful elder Tan couldn't compare to him. When he opened his eyes, there seemed to be billions of stars rotating in his eyes, containing the truth of heaven and earth and the eternal Tao. Greetings, sect master. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the outer sect, inner sect, true disciples, deacons, or elders, they all bowed to the old man. Rise. The sect master looked ancient, but his voice was calm and just like the spring breeze in February, making people feel warm all over. With a wave of his hand, everyone couldn't help but stand up. As he spoke, the sect master stretched out his arm like a cloud dragon's claw, grabbing at the void from afar. In the next moment, when he retracted his hand, a world fell into his palm. Then, with a gentle shake, there was a loud rumble. It was as if heaven and earth were being split apart, causing many primordial chaos realm disciples to shake. After the sound, there was lightning and thunder, a storm, raging fire, hail, and snowflakes. All sorts of strange phenomena appeared, looking very dangerous. These were all caused by the friction of the void, and their power was extraordinary. Chapter 14:14. As Taoist, Yi shook open this part of the world. In an instant, an incomparably tyrannical aura seemed to have broken through a seal. It was like a raging sea traversing the heavens. Amidst the grandeur, tens of thousands of lightning bolts descended upon the world, battering the air and causing the howling wind to blow in all directions. The strength of the gale and thunderbolts made it seem as if half of the Tao chaotic world was shaking. The mountains and stars were swaying, and the rivers and lakes were tumbling. The cracks in the space were like ferocious, poisonous dragons. Even ordinary immortal realm experts would turn into ashes if they were not careful, let alone primordial chaos realm experts. Even late-stage and peak immortal realm experts would be severely injured, and their cultivation would be consumed if they were hit directly. It was extremely terrifying. However, apart from the disciples at the primordial chaos realm, everyone else was watching all of this with bright eyes. They knew that this was a world colliding with the space barrier of the Tao chaotic world. To be more precise, a mystic realm hidden in the Tao chaotic world had been drawn out by the Tao sect leader. When it appeared, the laws were different from the Tao chaotic world, so a chemical reaction was triggered. Disciples, this is a mystic realm of the Tao sect called the Crimson Firmament Realm. This time, the first match of the intersect competition will be held in it. After the mystic realm completely appeared, the sect leader spoke slowly. His voice was neither fast nor slow. It was slightly spread out, but it fell clearly into everyone's ears. However, it was not ear-piercing. In the past, the competition was usually an arena competition. Apart from the seeded contestants, the other contestants would fight each other in pairs. The winner would be the king, and the loser would be the bandit. Although there had been Mystic Realm selections before, none of the Mystic Realms could compare to the Crimson Firmament Realm. Ordinary Mystic Realms were either Boundless Worlds or ordinary Desolation Realms. However, the Crimson Firmament Realm was different. As a top-notch Mystic Realm, its origin was somewhat shocking. When the Tao sect was at its peak, the Patriarch God Emperor had personally destroyed a sect called the Crimson Firmament Sect and seized the sect. There were countless opportunities in the intersect. It was originally a chaotic world, but due to some reasons, it had been demoted to a half-step chaotic world. Putting all of this aside, the reason why the Tao sect was so generous this time was actually very simple. Firstly, the quality and quantity of the inner disciples this time far surpassed the previous years. They were considered top-notch existences in the previous years. Other than Fang Qingshan, there were other dark horses that emerged one after another from the original top 10 intersect disciples. Good disciples naturally needed good resources, and the sect was not stingy with them. On the other hand, there were guests from the Drifting Snow Palace, the Martial Apex sect, the Eternal Heaven sect, and many others. Everyone from the Tao sect knew what their motives were. Since they wanted to see exactly how strong the Tao sect was, the Tao sect was not afraid at all. Other than their disciples, they naturally had to show some of their heritage so that they could not underestimate them. Of course, times have changed. The current Crimson Firmament realm naturally couldn't be compared to when it was at its peak, not to mention that its grade had already dropped. The truly precious things in the Crimson Firmament realm, such as the level 4 supreme treasure of the Crimson Firmament sect, the inherited incantations, and the top-notch spiritual root, were all taken away from the very beginning. Even so, just this territory alone was enough to make it so that no one could underestimate it. This was especially true for those in the Immortal Realm, and even for those in the Divine Emperor Realm. This was a top-notch Desolation Realm, which was even above the Pan-Gu Desolation Realm. It had almost reached the half-step Chaotic Realm. If it didn't drop in grade, even the Pan-Gu Chaotic Realm couldn't be compared to it. As a secret realm, even in the Tao sect, there were only a few of them. To summon it, other than the sect leader who had an innate advantage, other elders, even if they were all at the peak of the Divine Emperor realm, would need at least 7 of them to join forces to summon it. You will enter the secret realm in order and rank according to the total value of the treasures you have obtained or the demons you have killed. The top 100 will enter the final challenge tournament. As the sect leader of the Tao sect, he had always been elusive. Many disciples probably hadn't even seen him before. This time, if it weren't for so many distinguished guests and the extraordinary potential of Fang Qingshan and the others, he wouldn't have shown up. To him, although he was the sect leader, he didn't take charge of the overall situation. Usually, The deputy sect leader and the elders with real power would handle the matters. His real role was to stabilize the situation. What he needed to do most was to cultivate so that he could break through to the Emperor God realm as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this step was too difficult. Although the current sect leader of the Tao sect was comparable to Elder Tan in the past, he still needed opportunities to break through. Otherwise, he didn't know when it would take him. After the sect leader of the Tao sect pulled out the Crimson Firmament realm, he disappeared, and the hosting was handed over to the technique imparting elder. He spoke in a loud and sonorous voice that reached everyone's ears. Then, with a wave of his hand, a simple and unadorned token after token fell accurately into everyone's hands like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. Everyone was naturally familiar with this item. It was both a calculator for calculating points and a life-saving card. It could automatically calculate the total value of heavenly materials and earthly treasures that one had obtained and the demons they had killed. It could also be directly transferred out if one encountered an irresistible danger. After all, although there were countless opportunities in the Crimson Firmament realm, opportunities were often accompanied by danger. However, neither the higher-ups nor the disciples of the Tao sect cared about this. If the higher-ups cared, the dangers in the Crimson Firmament realm could be eliminated directly. However, how could it be used to hone one's skills? The disciples didn't care, but the opportunities were rare. Wealth came from danger, so where would there be no danger? Even if one didn't do anything, there would still be people sitting at home. Disaster came from the sky. It all depended on whether there were enough benefits and value. As for dying in the end, neither the higher-ups nor the disciples would care. If it was useless, even with the token, it could only be said that one was fated to face this disaster. If it was a blessing, it wasn't a curse, and if it was a curse, it couldn't be avoided. Moreover, there was a death quota for training soldiers, and the Tao sect was no exception. Moreover, those who couldn't avoid such a situation, whether it was because of their strength or luck, had no value to the Tao sect. Crimson Firmament Realm. Fang Qingshan said in a low voice. However, his eyes suddenly emitted a shocking light. When he heard that the Crimson Firmament realm was rich in resources and that everything he obtained inside would belong to him, he was immediately tempted. Although he had asked Taoist 1 and the World Tree clone to plunder 7 to 8 dangerous places, and each time, it was still not enough for his cultivation. This was especially true after Fang Qingshan, Mosquito Daoran, and the World Tree clone advanced to the Immortal Realm. Fang Qingshan had even broken through to the peak late-stage Immortal Realm and was about to become a God Emperor. Therefore, he needed more resources. Chapter 14:15. As the saying went, as long as the saints were alive, the thieves would not stop. Why were the saints thieves? Because they were immortal. They constantly consumed resources and stole providence in the process of cultivation. Even heaven and earth could not bear the burden of them. Compared to the saints, the immortals and divine emperors were obviously better. Fang Qingshan's assets were not bad among the primordial chaos immortals, but it was barely enough to keep himself warm among the immortals and was just a little better than an itinerant cultivator. However, it was impossible for him to advance by leaps and bounds like the primordial chaos realm with his current resources. Not to mention what would happen after he broke through to the divine emperor realm. Therefore, Fang Qingshan needed resources, lots and lots of resources. It was not just him. No one dared to say that they did not need resources and could only rely on meditation and cultivation to reach the end. However, resources were not so easy to obtain. If the Myriad Realms were a feudal dynasty with a long history, resources would be like land. Then, one would be able to clearly understand the current situation. Apart from dangerous places and mystic realms, many things already had owners. Unlike the feudal dynasty, once the dynasty reached its limit, it could be overthrown. Land could be redistributed. Although the Myriad Realms also had great tribulations, under normal circumstances, the strong would always be strong. Even if there were accidents, they were rare. Therefore, based on this situation, How could Fang Qingshan not be tempted when he saw an opportunity in front of him? At the moment, he was already fantasizing about how to empty the Crimson Firmament realm. If he could do this, Fang Qingshan would be able to cultivate to the Divine Emperor realm, let alone the Immortal realm. After all, although the Crimson Firmament sect was not as strong as the Dao sect, it was not weaker than the major families of the Merchant Chaotic world. Although many of the good things had been taken away by the Dao sect, the leftovers were enough to satisfy him. Fang Qingshan was not the only one. The other inner sect disciples who had some understanding of the Crimson Firmament realm were all red-eyed at this moment. They rubbed their palms together, eager to show off their skills. Even if it was not for the Dao sect's reward, they had to work hard just to obtain the gains. After all, the Dao sect's upper echelons had only taken away the best things that were useful for peak Divine Emperors. The others were also effective for those below the peak of God Emperor. At this moment, not to mention the inner court disciples, even the elite disciples, and some of the elders were envious and jealous. Unfortunately, he was born at the wrong time. Normally, not to mention a secret realm like this wasn't open to the public. Even if it was open to the public, one had to render great merits or use an enormous amount of Dao insight points to exchange for it. Yet now one could actually enter it unconditionally, and it was truly fate. The Dao sect's generosity naturally made the people from the other sects who came to attend the ceremony gasp in amazement. Not to mention those small forces and rogue cultivators. There was nothing comparable at all. It was just like when Fang Qingshan arrived at Fuyuan Mountain. It was like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden. However, even the likes of the fluttering snow palace could not help but sigh inwardly. Sure enough, a veteran top-notch force was not something that a new force could catch up to in a short period of time. This was because their foundations were far too rich. In our fluttering snow palace, probably only the water and fire secret grounds can be mentioned in the same breath. Beside Lang Chinli, a youth who was slightly weaker than him spoke with uncertainty. It should be. Lang Chinli nodded solemnly. Although the current fluttering snow palace looked incomparably powerful and was not inferior to the Dao sect, or even better because they had an emperor god, they were still far from the Dao sect in terms of foundations. Just like the Crimson Firmament realm, it was definitely not the only one in the Dao sect. In fact, there were quite a few of them. In fact, there were even more powerful ones. In the Drifting Snow Palace, this was already the top secret realm, and it was extremely rare. However, among them, there were two sects who merely narrowed their eyes slightly and acted as if nothing had happened. They did not show much shock or emotion. These two sects were none other than the Martial Pinnacle sect and the Eternal Heaven sect. The Martial Pinnacle sect stood on the left side of the fluttering snow palace. There were not many of them, only 10 in total, but all of them were unusually valiant. Every one of them was like a barbarian with bulging muscles and a towering aura. It was as if one of them was stronger than thousands of troops and horses. In particular, the leader was a middle-aged man. He was tall and had broad shoulders. He stood with his hands behind his back, and his form-fitting armor made his body look even more majestic. His eyes were extremely deep, like two whirlpools. The chi and blood around him were like the scorching sun in the sky, and all evils avoided him. The faint sound of a powerful army could be heard coming from his body. Further to the left was the Eternal Heaven sect. There were not many people in this sect, only about 10 of them. However, they were completely different from the fluttering Snow Palace and the Martial Pinnacle sect. Instead, they were a little similar to the Dao sect, and their auras were natural. The person in the lead seemed to be inferior to the Sky Martial Underworld Hall Master of the Martial Pinnacle sect, but no one dared to underestimate him. Even the Sky Martial Underworld Hall Master of the Martial Pinnacle sect had to give way to him. This was because he was the divine general of the Eternal Heaven sect. Since he was a general, how could he be as calm as he looked? The reason for this could only mean one thing. He had returned to his original state. The group of immature young men and women standing behind him did not seem to be comparable to the Martial Pinnacle sect. After all, The martial pinnacle sect's combat power was almost invincible among their peers at the beginning. However, that was only when compared to the martial pinnacle sect. In fact, each and every one of them had a powerful aura. The reason why these two sects were unmoved was not because they looked down on the Crimson Firmament realm. It was because, although Yang Yuan was good, it might not be a place to stay for long. To the martial pinnacle sect, it was somewhat similar to the Wu people and the Azura clan. To them, fighting was the most effective way to improve their cultivation. They often flew against the wind, turned defeat into victory, and broke through bottlenecks. It was not that resources were not important to them. It was just that compared to fighting, it was secondary. To them, reading 10,000 books was not as good as walking 10,000 miles, and meditating was not as good as fighting. Between life and death, there was great terror, and fighting was the best teacher. Therefore, they were not envious or shocked by the Crimson Firmament realm. Instead, they were eager to try the dangers in the Crimson Firmament realm. However, the Eternal Heaven sect was different from a martial pinnacle sect. The reason why they were unmoved was because they had a strong foundation like the Dao sect. The Eternal Heaven sect, the Eternal Heaven sect. This sect was known as the Eternal Spring and Autumn sect. The sect's inheritance was orderly, and it was not inferior to the Dao sect. The only thing they lacked was their top-notch strength. Of course, this was referring to the Dao sect at its peak. The two top-notch tycoons naturally would not be shocked just because one person suddenly took out a mountain and a mine. Because, if needed, he could take out something similar or even better at any time. With such a foundation, the Eternal Heaven sect reaction was not surprising. Chapter 14:16. The higher-ups of the Dao sect sighed when they saw the performance of the Pinnacle sect and the Eternal Heaven sect. Didn't they create such a big scene to show off the power of the Dao sect in front of them? Unfortunately, from the looks of it, although they didn't fail to achieve their goal, the effect would definitely be greatly reduced. This was also because the Dao sect had declined and didn't have a God Emperor to oversee it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. After all, true experts were full of confidence and didn't need to go through so much trouble. At the same time, they were even more certain of the idea of vigorously nurturing Fang Qingshan and the others. They wanted to be like the Crimson Firmament sect back then and nurture a God Emperor as soon as possible. Only then would the Dao sect be free of worries. As time passed, the influence of the Dao sect became weaker and weaker. If no God Emperor appeared, the scene that they had painstakingly maintained would collapse. It was not an easy task for a God Emperor to appear. What mattered the most was luck and opportunity, as well as an indomitable and irresistible aura. The Dao sect didn't lack peak God Emperors, such as the sect leader, or resources, such as the Crimson Firmament realm. However, without the resources to help them break through to the Emperor realm, the sect leader and the others had lost their vigor. Therefore, they still needed to nurture young people. Jiang Overlord, Fang Qingshan, and the others were at the right time. If they could maintain their current breakthrough speed, it might not be impossible for the Dao sect leader and the others to break through to the God Emperor realm. After all, they were old and their potential was almost depleted. Jiang Overlord, Fang Qingshan, and especially Fang Qingshan, were different. He was also the master of the Timeless Arc and had unlimited potential. If it wasn't for the fact that the Timeless Arc's breakthrough consumed too many resources and that the Dao sect wasn't at the end of its tether, Daoist EE and the others would have taken out all the resources of the Dao sect and pushed the Timeless Arc to the God Emperor realm. Let's not talk about that for now. After the technique, Imparting Elder distributed the points and life-saving medallions. His hands are like the thousand-armed Guanyin as he performed a series of hand signs. Open. Rumble. In the next moment, layers of ripples appeared on the surface of the Crimson Firmament realm. The ripples were as dark as ink. Suddenly, a crack opened, like a fledgling hatching out of its shell. In an instant, it grew in the wind and turned into a door that was in between reality and illusion. It was similar to the Dao Chaos World's Heaven Dimensional Gate. The realm gate is open. Disciples quickly enter. In fact, even without the technique imparting Elder's Call, everyone was already itching to enter, because through the gate, everyone could already see the various natural treasures in this world. Let's go. One step ahead, every step ahead. Go. He who strikes first gains the upper hand. Charge. The disciples, who had long been unable to hold themselves back, all displayed their abilities at this moment. Some took flight, some used flying swords, some used magic treasures, and some used combat skills. However, all of them flew toward the realm gate as fast as they could. Among them, the most outstanding were naturally the former top 10 inner court disciples and the group of dark horses. There was no need to talk about him among the top 10 inner sanctum disciples. Among the group of dark horses, other than Fang Qingshan, every single one of them had similarly accumulated their strength and soared into the sky. They were like the 10 inner court disciples who had yet to become core disciples. They all wanted to find a special time like this to maximize their benefits. Unfortunately, they did not look at the almanac back then and did not expect Fang Qingshan to be a variable. If not for Fang Qingshan, they would definitely shine brightly. Unfortunately, with Fang Qingshan in front of them, although they also became dark horses, they seemed to have faded into the crowd. The group of people charged forward courageously. The others could not even get close to them, let alone surpass them. This was because their auras were fully unleashed and they were competing with each other. The reason for this was naturally to fight for the upper hand. However, they could not directly attack them, and they could not even secretly trip them up. After all, the Dao sect was different from other sections. The disciples were more united. Even if it was to fight for opportunities, their methods were relatively less bloody. Moreover, this was just the beginning. Everything was still unknown, so it was not worth it to provoke a strong enemy before everything was clear. Therefore, the best method was to use their imposing manner and go all out. This way, they would be able to find out a thing or two, but they would not go all out. Therefore, because everyone was very restrained, they seemed to not interfere with each other's business. In the whistling sound, Fang Qingshan and the others took the lead and entered the Crimson Firmament realm. The other inner court disciples naturally followed closely behind. After everyone entered, the Elder of Technique imparting waved his hand and the domain gate closed. Like a dreamy bubble, it turned into mottled spots of light and dissipated into the air. At the same time, a star map rose into the air and slowly unfolded, hanging above the crimson firmament like a curtain. This item was a complementary product to the token given to the disciples earlier, just like the relationship between a surveillance camera and a camera. However, the only difference was that although this catalog could monitor the disciples, and those dots of light that were like stars represented each disciple, it could only be determined by the color of the light. The brighter the light, the darker the color, the higher the score. Once the light dimmed, it meant that the disciple had died or been eliminated. As for what the disciples did in the Crimson Firmament realm, there was no way to see it. In fact, this was normal. After all, everyone had privacy, especially cultivators, who valued their trump cards even more. If they were exposed in front of everyone, once they were targeted, they would be in danger. However, although the disciples could not observe the people in the Crimson Firmament realm like the star map, they could still know their movements at any time through this star map. Putting aside what happened to the people in the outside world, after Fang Qingshan and the others entered the Crimson Firmament realm, they were transported to different places. This was also to train the disciples. After all, if they were together and acted as a group, the effect would be greatly reduced, and there might even be people who were just there to make up the numbers. Moreover, the separation also depended on luck. Those with good luck would be placed in good places, and those with bad luck would naturally be placed in good places. As soon as Fang Qingshan entered, he sensed a deep malice and suppression. From afar, he could sense that there were golden spears and armored horses, war banners sweeping, iron-blooded, unparalleled killing, war spears, soldiers, glory, iron-blooded, war and loftiness. There was also a gloomy aura like a ghost realm. Ghosts wailed and cried, shaking the heavens and the earth. The dim yellow blood river stretched across the void, stained with blood, floating resentful spirits, and the shadows of countless demons were faintly discernible, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Wherever this river went, the sky and the earth turned into a dead silence, as if a natural disaster had destroyed the world. In this regard, Fang Qingshan was not surprised at all. After all, he was someone who had read through the Great Doctrine Palace, and he knew many secrets, especially the secrets of the Dao sect. Chapter 14:17. Knowledge was power. These words were not false. Sometimes, knowledge didn't just consist of cultivation techniques, divine abilities, experience, common sense, but also recorded anecdotes like this. Fang Qingshan remembered that a book called Chronicles of the Crimson Firmament recorded everything about the Crimson Firmament sect, including its origin, development, and final destruction. In fact, the Crimson Firmament sect's destruction wasn't because they provoked the Dao sect. It was because of the Dao sect's special characteristic, promise. They had provoked someone whose ancestors had once been a great benefactor to the Dao sect. Therefore, the Dao sect's intervention was considered a fuse. What really destroyed them was their arrogance and madness. Arrogance was easy to explain. They were nouveau riche, arrogant, and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. This was common. As for their madness, it was to accumulate resources to support a god-emperor. If primordial chaos realm cultivators could rely on resources to break through to immortal realm and immortal realm cultivators to become god-emperors, then there was almost no shortcut for god-emperors to become god-emperors. Even if there was, it wasn't something that ordinary forces or individuals could have. The Dao sect, the 5 major families of the chaotic world of Shang, all of them desired to become god-emperors. They weren't rich in resources, but none of them had succeeded. However, in addition to heaven-defying treasures, there were actually some forbidden techniques that could also be used. Since it was a forbidden technique, it naturally wasn't that easy to obtain. No one knew where the Crimson Firmament sect had obtained such an item that could extract the origin power of the chaotic world, as well as the true spirits of 9,000 titled primordial chaos realm cultivators, 3,000 titled immortal realm cultivators, and 1,000 titled God Emperor cultivators. Hence, he tried to use a taboo method that was forbidden by the world to nurture a God Emperor. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. They were about to succeed, but unfortunately, the titled God Emperor they were looking for happened to be related to the Dao sect, and the Dao sect owed them a promise. It was precisely because of this promise that the Dao sect had failed. Originally, the Dao sect wasn't so overbearing as to destroy the entire sect. They could only blame themselves for not understanding the situation and being discovered by the Dao sect using a forbidden technique, resulting in the sect's destruction. However, people who failed rarely found fault with themselves, and the Crimson Firmament sect was no exception. To them, if not for the Dao school, they would have succeeded. Now, not to mention the God Emperor, even the entire school was destroyed. One could imagine how great the resentment was. These people of the Crimson Firmament Gate turned into vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies after they died, running amok in the Crimson Firmament realm. Anyone who had the aura of the Dao sect would want nothing more than to rush up and eat their flesh raw. However, the Dao sect allowed this to happen. So long as it didn't threaten the existence of the Crimson Sky realm, it would completely disregard it. The reason for this was naturally because they'd taken this place to be a training ground, and these vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies were merely making use of trash to be used as whetstones to nurture the disciples of the Dao Insight School. Seeing this, not only was Fang Qingshan not afraid, he even felt refreshed. It was somewhat similar to the martial apex sect. However, what was different was that what Fang Qingshan valued was not the battle, but the benefits that came with it. Barren mountains and unruly rivers produce unruly people, but these places also produce treasures. In particular, The more desolate and undeveloped a place was, the more treasures there would be. For example, the boundless mountain in Shushan. Because such a place was sparsely populated and undeveloped, the good things would naturally be left behind. Moreover, disregarding the unique treasures of heaven and earth, just these vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies were also a rich asset. To others, vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies were of little value. They were tasteless, but it was a pity to abandon them. Other than being a threat and trouble, they seemed to be useless. However, to Fang Qingshan, as long as there was origin energy, it was a good thing. There were no useless things, only things that couldn't be used. Even if he couldn't use it himself, Mosquito Dowrin wouldn't refuse anything. He was born from the Blood Sea, and wasn't the Blood Sea the home of these vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies? The World Tree clone was the same. He cultivated the World Tao, and all the 3,000 great Taos were within it. It wasn't just the righteous Tao, the immortal Tao, the Buddhist Tao, but also the evil Tao and the devil Tao. Vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies could also help him cultivate the evil Tao. Even Fang Qingshan himself might be able to use it. After all, his natal Tao was the reincarnation Tao. Reincarnation included life and death, and vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies were all dead things. In addition, he could also learn the Buddhist Tao of enlightenment. If he could enlighten all the vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies in the Crimson Firmament realm, he wouldn't need any other resources to break through to the God King realm. Moreover, the amount of merit would be so great that even the God King tribulation would be weakened by 50%. Once he broke through, it wouldn't be as simple as just entering the God King realm. Even if it wasn't as good as breaking through to the next realm, it wouldn't be as simple as Lang Qianli and Mosquito Dowrin. Unfortunately, Fang Qingshan was not an eminent monk of great virtue. He was not too proficient in the path of enlightenment. He had only learned a bit about it back in a mortal world. The World Tree also knew a bit about it. However, if he wanted to enlighten the entire Crimson Firmament's plane, it would be as easy as sniffing out salted fish. After all, there were not only origin immortals and immortal emperors who had turned into vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies in the Crimson Firmament realm. For safety reasons, these God Kings were suppressed in some special places by the experts of the Daoul sect. As long as they didn't provoke them, they would be fine. After all, the Daoul sect wanted to sharpen their disciples, not send them to their deaths. Naturally, Fang Qingshan wouldn't have any problem facing the vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies at the immortal realm. However, Fang Qingshan wasn't confident in defeating the God Emperor realm, even the weakest God Emperor. After all, the higher one's cultivation was, the more obvious the gap would be. Even if it was just a small realm, not to mention the big realms like the Immortal Realm and the God Emperor Realm. When Jiang Baowang reached the peak of Immortal Realm, he could only protect himself when facing the experts who had just entered the God Emperor Realm. Fortunately, he had the trump card and the identity of the Daoul sect. However, if Fang Qingshan consolidated his cultivation and broke through the peak of Immortal Realm, he could be like Inxia Marquis and the others and kill God Emperors. However, he could only deal with some ordinary experts who had just entered the God Emperor realm. After all, no one who could break through to the God Emperor realm was simple. Especially for the rogue cultivators, it was not easy for them to reach this step. Their perseverance, willpower, and luck were definitely the best, even better than the disciples of the sect. Let's not talk about these for now. Just the vengeful spirits, evil ghosts, and zombies evolved from the origin immortals, and immortals were enough for Fang Qingshan to eat and drink. After all, they were different from the other vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies. They were all evolved from the disciples of the Crimson Firmament Hall, so they definitely had the wealth of these disciples from back then. Just this income alone was enough to make people drool. Chapter 1418. After all, the Crimson Firmament sect was a major force that was not weaker than the 5 major families of the merchant chaotic world. In fact, they were even stronger. After all, they were a force that had almost used the forbidden secret law to create a celestial emperor. The disciples of such a sect would definitely be extraordinary as well. Naturally, they would have a lot of wealth. If this sum of resources was included, it would not be simple. As for whether the Tao will sect would take away their family properties, Fang Qingshan thought that it was unlikely. After all, the various good things in the huge Crimson Firmament realm had not been taken away, let alone their own wealth. However, the Tao will sect's higher-ups did not care about the things these disciples had. However, compared to the good things in the huge Crimson Firmament realm, Fang Qingshan actually cared more about the personal belongings of these disciples. It was not that he did not care about the things in the Crimson Firmament realm, but that he would not be able to get the real good things in the place. There were vengeful spirits, ghosts, and zombies at the level of God Emperor suppressed everywhere. Given Fang Qingshan's current means, even if he did everything he could, he would definitely not be able to get his hands on those things unless he was extremely lucky. The Crimson Firmament realm was almost the top mystic realm of the Tao, sect, and it was usually open for God Emperors. This time, if it was not for the special performance of Fang Qingshan and the others in the arrival of the Eternal Heaven sect, they would not have gotten their hands on it. On the other hand, the truly heaven-defying things in the Crimson Firmament realm had been taken away by the Tao sect. However, it did not mean that these disciples did not have any good things on them. One could not judge a book by its cover, and one could not measure the sea with a pail. After all, giants grew up from primordial chaos immortal realm. If they wanted to grow to God Emperor or Celestial Emperor, they would definitely need countless opportunities. For example, Fang Qingshan's all-heaven chessboard and the timeless Arkansas. 1 or 2 of them would be enough for one to use for a lifetime. Of course, Fang Qingshan could not be sure if they had such heaven-defying luck. If they really had such heaven-defying luck and obtained those powerful treasures, it was very likely that they could escape this calamity. However, he could not rule out the possibility that even if they obtained heaven-defying items, they would die before they could succeed. Who knew? However, it was better to believe than not. What if? What if there is? Moreover, even without these, Fang Qingshan was not at a loss, was he? In the end, priceless treasures like the timeless Ark and the all-heavens chessboard weren't rare. Fang Qingshan was just carrying a child on a rainy day. He had nothing to do anyway. Of course, in the entire Crimson Heaven sector, except for the battlefield and the dark, damp, and creepy places that had been transformed into vengeful spirits, ghosts, and zombies, everything else was fine. If the Crimson Firmament School hadn't used a secret method to advance in order to create a God Emperor and devoured the origin energy of the Crimson Firmament realm, which caused the Crimson Firmament realm to be severely damaged and fall from the chaotic world to the world of desolation, the origin will of the world wouldn't have been able to restore it completely, but at least it wouldn't have turned into such a mess. Although the Crimson Firmament realm couldn't compare to an ancient chaos world like the Tao Chaos world, it was still far more powerful than the Pan-Gu Chaos world. However, even so, some places still retained the appearance of a paradise. There were all sorts of precious herbs and materials in abundance. As far as the eye could see, Fang Qingshan saw many treasures like the Cassiopeia orchid, emptiness lingji, 9-leaf grass, void escape metal, soul-nurturing wood, and so on. There was a place where vengeful spirits, devils, and zombies couldn't avoid. There was a faint sound of Buddhist chanting. That was where the Cassiopeia orchid grew. It was a Buddhist treasure and had obvious effects on Buddhist cultivators. Wasn't there a Buddhist smile? 1 flower, 1 world, 1 leaf, 1 Bodhi, 1 Buddha, 1 orchid. This item was equivalent to a bottleneck-breaking pill for Buddhist cultivators at the Origin Chaos realm to break through to the immortal realm. However, Buddhism and Taoism were the most effective against and evil things, so these vengeful spirits, devils, and zombies subconsciously avoided this place. Not far from the Cassiopeia orchid, space was folded and there were many faults. That was where the void escape metal was located. Because it contained spatial laws, it was tough and was an important material for building teleportation formations. However, the quality of the void escape metal here wasn't very good. It could only be used to set up teleportation formations inside the Primal Chaos world. As for the bell-traversing Primal Chaos teleportation formation, it needed something of even better quality. Even so, it was already amazing, because the quality of the void escape metal here wasn't good, but it won in quantity. As for how Fong Qingshan knew, it was actually very simple, because there was a hill not far away that was filled with exposed void escape metal. Obviously, there should be a vein of or there. Otherwise, there wouldn't be spatial faults. Other than that, the soul-nurturing wood was also very good. The spirit-focusing formation and mind-calming incense in the guest pavilion mentioned earlier needed soul-nurturing wood. And here was a forest of soul-nurturing wood. But on the other hand, the danger here was even greater. The soul-nurturing wood was very good for Fong Qingshan, but for vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies, it was a holy object. It was very beneficial to them. Therefore, the vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies that gathered here were second to none in terms of quantity and quality. Putting all this aside for the time being, just as Fong Qingshan was looking around, he seemed to sense the aura of living people. There was even the unique aura of the Dao sect. He didn't know if it was because of his desire for blood, qi, and living people, or because of his hatred for the Dao sect. But the moment Fong Qingshan's aura was revealed, countless vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies rushed towards Fong Qingshan. Some of these vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies were evolved from the disciples, odd job workers, deacons, and spiritual beasts of the Scarlet Firmament sect. Some were born after the Een and demonic lands. These vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies were no less than the Een corpse battlefield that Mosquito Dowren had been to before. Moreover, their quality was even better. After all, most of them were evolved from disciples of famous sects, so their quality was naturally not comparable to those wild chickens. Even if they didn't have their past memories, their instincts and foundations were still there. Unfortunately, Fong Qingshan wasn't someone that Mosquito Dowren could compare to. He was now at the peak of the late-stage immortal realm. His strength was abnormally strong, and he also had the timeless Arkansas. Whether it was a one-on-one fight or a group attack, he wasn't afraid. Moreover, because the God Emperor was sealed here, the remaining immortals weren't in Fong Qingshan's eyes at all. Therefore, facing the attacks of these vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies, Fong Qingshan didn't do it himself. Instead, he released Mosquito Dowren. In terms of numbers, Mosquito Dowren hadn't defeated anyone yet. With a shake of his body, countless blood god scions rushed out. Chapter 1419. Although the Crimson Heaven realm was more dangerous than the 10,000 Beast Mountain and the Evil Corpse battlefield, but those real immortal level wraiths, zombies, and dead souls rarely wander around. After all, their instincts were stronger. They knew to look for some paradises or natural treasures to guard. This was more beneficial to them. Therefore, the attacks that rushed over were similar to the attacks from the 10,000 Beast Mountain and other places. And what about Mosquito Dowren? He was not the same as before. Back then, he was only at the peak of primordial chaos, but now he had reached the mid-stage immortal realm. Therefore, not long after, the wraiths, and zombies that rushed toward Fong Qingshan were swept away by Mosquito Dowren, and the remaining ones fled. Although wraiths, and zombies had no intelligence, they knew fear. In the past, even if the people who came were very powerful, they would at most kill their way out of the encirclement, or if they were even more powerful, they would directly release their aura to deter them and ignore them. But Mosquito Dowren and the others were different. Not only did they kill, but they did not let any of them go. They killed until the sky and earth were turned upside down. They killed until blood flowed like a sea. Knowing that Fong Qingshan could not be provoked, he knew that he could not afford to offend him. Unfortunately, it was easy to invite them in, but difficult to send them away. Since they were here, How could Fang Qingshan and the others let them go? No matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat, wasn't it? For a while, Fang Qingshan and Mosquito Daoran divided the work. One was responsible for chasing these wraiths, and zombies, while the other was responsible for collecting all kinds of resources. Rare spirit medicines that were worth thousands of gold coins and top-grade refining materials could be found everywhere. This allowed Fang Qingshan to make a lot of money. Of course, the reason why there were so many good things was that Fang Qingshan was lucky. When he entered, he was transported to a good place. Of course, this was a good place for Fang Qingshan, but for ordinary disciples, it was a dragon's pool and tiger's den. Therefore, when it came to opportunities, sometimes it was really hard to say. If one's virtue did not match the position, one would not be able to enjoy the blessings. Without sufficient strength, even if a fortuitous opportunity came, one would not be able to obtain it. It might even be a blessing or a curse. Putting that aside, in order to expand the results of the battle, Fang Qingshan sent out the World Tree Clone again. At the same time, he used the one-breath Sanqing. The role of the World Tree Clone was the same as last time. It was doing what Fang Qingshan had done previously, collecting all the resources nearby, not even letting go of a single hair. In this aspect, he and Mosquito Daoran complemented each other. The main reason was that he had a lot of roots, and they were the origin of all wood, so it would be easier for him to collect natural materials without harming them. Of course, this time was a little different from the last time they were in the dangerous place. This was the territory of the Dao, sect after all, so they could not do anything like destroying their roots. However, Fang Qingshan had already done his best to get 9 out of 10. As for Mosquito Daoran, he was responsible for killing and devouring ordinary vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies. Meanwhile, the 3 clones manifested by the one-breath Sanqing carried out the decapitation plan with Fang Qingshan's main body. They killed the more troublesome, more ferocious, and more cunning vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies. In this way, Fang Qingshan's speed was much faster, and his efficiency was also increasing. At the same time, the phenomenon in the outside world was that the star representing Fang Qingshan was getting brighter and brighter, almost changing with every breath. Even though he did not obtain many good things, he could not stop the many vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and zombies that he had killed. What? Seeing this, the people in the outside world who were constantly paying attention naturally noticed this abnormal change. Oh, is this person? Good heavens, this brightness change is too fast. Yeah, this is just the beginning. The others haven't changed much yet. I'm afraid he fell into a treasure trove. It's very likely. So it's him. Not bad, not bad. He really didn't let us down. The others might not know Fang Qingshan's identity, but the elders of imparting arts and the others knew him very well. After finding out that it was Fang Qingshan, they immediately felt extremely relieved. However, it was not only Fang Qingshan. Although the others did not perform as brightly as Fang Qingshan, as time passed, they also began to catch up. For a time in the star catalog, the stars were like suns in the sky, competing to shine brightly, dazzling everyone. Back in the Crimson Heaven realm, Fang Qingshan's group once again reenacted the events of the 10,000 Beast Mountain and the Een Corpse battlefield. They crazily plundered all kinds of resources, slaughtering all kinds of ghosts, vengeful spirits, and zombies. As a result, their bodies were covered in a layer of killing intent that soared into the sky. It could be clearly felt from far away, causing the ghosts, vengeful spirits, and zombies to flee as if they had met their natural enemy. As they advanced, they scraped the ground 3 feet away. Suddenly, an extremely dangerous feeling struck Fang Qingshan's heart, causing him to instantly be alarmed. He knew that he was being watched. There must be a poisonous snake lying in wait in the dark, spitting out apricots, staring at him with its triangular eyes, revealing an ominous glint, ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. Without thinking carefully, Fang Qingshan's feet moved, and a chessboard appeared. Almost at the same time, there was a slight sound of air breaking. At the place where Fang Qingshan was previously standing, a dagger suddenly appeared, spitting out a cold light. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan was standing on the heaven chessboard, escaping into space and time, so the dagger stabbed empty air. "Humph." Fang Qingshan snorted coldly. He raised his hand and slapped down, exploding the space. Unfortunately, although his attack was fast, the person in the dark was not slow either. After missing the attack, he immediately fled 1,000 miles away, causing Fang Qingshan to return without any success. Fang Qingshan's eyes narrowed. He did not expect that he would encounter an elite not long after entering the Crimson Heaven realm. This person was not to be underestimated. He must have evolved from an elite true disciple of the Crimson Heaven sect in the past. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to sneak up on him without a sound. Most importantly, how could ordinary ghosts, vengeful spirits, and zombies know how to assassinate, conceal their aura, use their spiritual treasures, and even know psychological warfare? After missing the first attack, he actually hit again, but showed a movement that seemed to be ready to attack at any time, imperceptibly giving people a kind of pressure. Clenching a fist in one's hand was more frightening than striking out. This kind of invisible pressure of crisis could crush a person alive and cause them to collapse. This kind of pressure had a terrifying effect on the mind. After all, one could only be a thief for 1,000 days. How could one guard against a thief for 1,000 days? The enemy was in the light while he was in the dark. No matter how strong he was, he could not always keep his mind in a state of peak vigilance. Hardness could not last long, and softness could not last long. This was the truth. He wanted to wear down Fang Qingshan's mind and will imperceptibly. Once his mind and will really relaxed, he would immediately launch a terrible fatal attack. What a pity, Fang Qingshan sneered. Unfortunately, he met Fang Qingshan. He could not achieve his goal in the end. Chapter 1420. Too much pressure could indeed cause one to reveal flaws and become mentally exhausted. But obviously, this little bit of pressure was nothing to Fang Qingshan. If it was a deity emperor or a heavenly prodigy like the Yin Fang Qingshan might be more cautious. Although the disciple in front of him was not bad, it was obviously just not bad. Fang Qingshan had a technique that specialized in cultivating the mind, the great Tao of the green lotus diagram, visualizing it and forming the eternal immovable seal with one's hands. One would be able to calm one's mind and calm one's qi. One's heart would be as clear as ice, unshakable by the heavens and earth, calm and composed in all sorts of changes. Not to mention this pressure, even if the world collapsed, he would not be afraid. Moreover, his will had experienced the baptism of the torrent of history, the impact of the eternal blessing, the 5 signs of Deva, and the tempering of the immortal tribulation. How could this pressure shake his mind? In fact, Fang Qingshan didn't need to care at all. He could continue wasting time with him because he was always in peak condition. It was just that he couldn't fully concentrate and still had to divert some of his attention to be on guard. This would delay the time he needed to collect resources. Cutting off one's path to wealth was like killing one's parents. Delaying his collection of resources was something that Fang Qingshan could not tolerate. After all, the most important thing now was to collect resources. He, the World Tree Doppelganger, Mosquito Dowrin, and Timeless Ark were all big eaters, waiting to be fed. The resources that he had collected from those dangerous places were simply a drop in the bucket. Of course, on the other hand, it was also because this was also a naked resource. Previously, Fang Qingshan had already judged that the treasures on these disciples were very valuable to Fang Qingshan. Now it was here. It was really like having a pillow when one was sleepy. This should be a fat fish, an elite monster. If he killed him, he would definitely get a lot of benefits. Not to mention other things, just the fact that he could hide near Fang Qingshan without him noticing. Moreover, he couldn't find any clues after careful observation. This alone was enough to make Fang Qingshan tempted. He just didn't know whether it was because of the subtlety of the divine sense or the mystery of the spirit treasure. Those who knew how to assassinate him, who could maintain their intelligence, and who could use numinous treasures, had at least 30% of their wealth. He must have some precious treasure on him. Moreover, offense was the best defense. Although he did not immediately discover where his opponent was hiding, it was enough to confirm that he was nearby. Since he was in that space-time, Fang Qingshan only had to break the seal, and he would have nowhere to hide. 5 Elements Reincarnation Diagram Seal. With Fang Qingshan's soft voice. In an instant, a wisp of green smoke emerged from the Baihui acupoint on the top of his head and spread out in the air. 2 wheels floated in the air, like the fetal membrane of heaven and earth. The top was colorful, with layers of mountains, boundless oceans, flames that could burn the sky and boil the sea, flowers and trees, and star mineral veins. The bottom wheel was black and white. Time and space were not visible. Cause and effect were difficult to distinguish, and life and death existed. The 2 wheels, one above and one below, instantly locked the attached space as the diagram expanded. Spin. Fang Qingshan pointed in the distance. The upper and lower wheels began to spin. The 5 elements roulette above rotated clockwise. The reincarnation roulette below rotated counterclockwise. In the middle of the 2 wheels, a terrible area of destruction was formed in an instant. As it rotated, it seemed to cause the whole world and time to distort. For a moment, heaven and earth completely turned into nothingness. Time and space collapsed, turning into earth, fire, water, and wind, turning into endless destructive power. It swept in all directions. Heaven and earth fell silent. This time, the killer hiding in the dark couldn't hide anymore. Indecisiveness would only lead to trouble. Therefore, the moment Fang Qingshan took out the array diagram, he attacked. Rip! With a ripping sound, the entire space and time seemed to be torn apart. In the next moment, a pitch-black figure appeared behind Fang Qingshan. This figure was a revenant. It was no different from the other revenants, only having a soul left. The only difference was its eyes. The other revenants only had an instinctive numbness and obsession, but this revenant's eyes were bright, no different from an ordinary person's. He held a dagger in his hand. It was like a venomous dragon, spitting out a ferocious cold light. With unbelievable speed, he stabbed at Fang Qingshan's back. This dagger was so fast that one's essence soul couldn't react in time. This dagger was abnormally sharp. It seemed to be able to split time and space and sever karma. This dagger caught him off guard. It seemed to have arrived behind him in an instant and was about to stab into his back. Baleful aura and killing intent swept through the world like a tide. Once it was solidified, even with the strength of Fang Qingshan's body, he would probably find it difficult to defend. In particular, the dagger seemed to hide a strange power. It seemed to be cursed, sinful, and destructive. Good timing. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Fang Qingshan snorted coldly. Fang Qingshan naturally knew that he couldn't deal with this assassin by relying on the 5 elements reincarnation diagram alone. He didn't expect a single spell to be effective. What he wanted was to force the assassin out so that he had no choice but to fight him head-on. That way, he could strike with lightning speed and completely eliminate the problem. Condense. Fang Qingshan waved his hands. As soon as he spoke, the 5 elements reincarnation disc and 5 elements reincarnation disc tightened. The entire space naturally gave birth to an invisible force. Countless mysterious marks constantly flashed in the space, turning into chains of laws that locked down time and space. The entire space immediately froze. The assassin in the dark wanted to attack first to gain the upper hand. However, he didn't expect that the 5 elements reincarnation diagram would be that intimidating. As he was caught off guard, he was also stopped. Not only was he confined in the air, but his aura was also suppressed. His aura was reduced sharply. Previously, his aura had reached the late stage of a mortal realm. But now, it had dropped to the early stage of a mortal realm. "Break!" the assassin shouted hoarsely. Shortly after, he got rid of the restriction of the formation. Unfortunately, it was too late. If he was one step slower, He would be slower at every step. When experts fought, the outcome would be decided in a blink of an eye. He had lost the initiative, and his cultivation base wasn't as high as Fang Qingshan's. Falling into the formation, he needed to confront Fang Qingshan face to face. He didn't have any chance to survive. In this place, Fang Qingshan was the absolute ruler, a god. This place was his home field. Any outsider who came here would be subdued. Dying. Right after that, Fang Qingshan flicked his fingers. A beam of dazzling light that seemed to be able to shine for thousands of years shone brightly. It was like a spark that could set a prairie ablaze. In just a blink of an eye, it had swept over the entire world. At the same time, it was like the Milky Way was rolling back. Its momentum was unstoppable, and its power couldn't be resisted. Reincarnation all. It could break anything. This departed soul wanted to kill Fang Qingshan with one strike. So, Fang Qingshan gave him a taste of his own medicine. The reincarnation all had broken his true spirit. Chapter 14:21. Not good. The moment the assassin was bound by the diagram, he sensed that something was wrong. He turned pale with fright and sensed that he was about to die. There seemed to be a thick haze, vast and boundless, suddenly enveloping him. It was just like the sect extermination battle back then. He was caught off guard and unable to resist. Over the years, the Crimson Firmament realm had opened countless times. He had fought many times, but he had never encountered any danger. He did not expect to fail miserably this time. In fact, although he had retained his true spirit and intelligence, he was not as good as before. His judgment of things was not good enough. In the past, when he faced God Emperor cultivators, he naturally avoided them. He also did not encounter immortal-level experts that were too strong. For example, the inner sect or the top 10 direct disciples. Even if he could not beat them, he could still escape. Naturally, there was no danger. Unfortunately, this time, he met Fang Qingshan. It was his destiny to face such a calamity. It was fine that Fang Qingshan did not cause trouble for him, but he actually came to him. Good words could not persuade a damned ghost. Great mercy could not save him. Retreat. Without any hesitation, his body moved before his consciousness. Unfortunately, it was too late. After all, this was still the 5-element cycle diagram. Although he had broken free, the restrictive force still existed. Therefore, his speed was limited. Moreover, although he retained his intelligence, he did not have a physical body. He could not be compared to when he was at his peak. Even when he was at his peak, he could not compare to Fang Qingshan, let alone now. Being able to force Fang Qingshan to use 2 natural mystiques against him was already enough to make him feel proud. With a soft puff, the assassin's soul's eyes, which were originally full of vigor, suddenly became sluggish. His body came to an abrupt stop. From being agile, he became eternal. However, this eternity was endless silence and desolation. In response, the assassin's soul's eyes revealed a trace of relief. He had probably long wanted to get rid of this life that was neither human nor ghost. However, it was better to live than to die. If they could survive, no one would be willing to commit suicide, nor would they have the heart to do so. Now, dying in the hands of others was not necessarily a bad thing. Ding dong. Following the fall of this elite assassin's soul, a few crisp sounds rang out. Fang Qingshan's eyes lit up when he saw it. He bent down and picked up the 4 items in front of him. One of them was the dagger that he had used to assassinate him. The dagger had a natural and mysterious pattern on it. This pattern could increase the sharpness and shatterability of the dagger, making the dagger faster and more lethal. In terms of breaking through defense, it was somewhat similar to the reincarnation all, breaking through the surface with a single point. The most important thing was to conceal one's aura and merge it with space and shadows to achieve the effect of catching one off guard. Although it was only a medium LV2 spiritual treasure, it was not inferior to a high-grade or even a supreme-grade spiritual treasure in the hands of an ambitious person. It was the best equipment for assassins. Apart from the dagger, there were also 2 pearls, both black in color, deep and mysterious. However, The difference was that one of them was somewhat similar to the shadow dagger. If not for the fact that it was right in front of him, even if he scanned it with his primordial spirit, it would not seem to exist. This item looked ordinary, but it was a divine item. Although it had no offensive or defensive abilities, it was an expert in concealment. It complemented the shadow dagger even more. It was precisely because of this item that he had been able to sneak up on him and assassinate Fang Qingshan. Its grade was above the shadow dagger, reaching the second-level supreme grade. It was also above the life and death gourd, and it was not weaker than Yang Mei's green willow staff and Hongjuan's purple cloud palace. Seeing this Dharma treasure, Fang Qingshan was very happy because this item could be used as a divine furnace unit of the timeless Arkansas. The Nirvana Arc was an all-rounder timeless Arkansas. Its offense and defense were sufficient, but it lacked such an unorthodox spiritual treasure. However, it could be very useful at specific times. In fact, Fang Qingshan had long wanted to find a treasure that could conceal one's aura. However, such Dharma treasures were not good for offense or defense, and they were very rare. Otherwise, the quality would not be good. Although the Bell of Chaos was barely satisfactory, everyone had their own specialties. Previously, if Fang Qingshan had this hibernation pearl, Jiang Mingyue would not have been able to discover him so easily. This item could be used for sneak attacks or to protect one's life. The other was a soul-type spiritual treasure. At a glance, it seemed like it was going to devour one's primordial spirit. It was because of this spiritual treasure that this direct disciple could preserve his primordial spirit and even maintain his intelligence. He was not muddle-headed like others. Unfortunately, although this item preserved his primordial spirit and intelligence, this was all it could do. At the end of the day, it was only a second-level treasure. It could not be too heaven-defying. At the end of the day, the moment his physical body was destroyed, his path of cultivation had already been severed. If it were not for the fact that he was unwilling, he would have killed himself and reincarnated. The last item was a Taoist book. Fang Qingshan was no stranger to this. He had seen it many times in the Tao Palace. However, this cultivation technique was not bad. In terms of quality, it was at least an immortal cultivation technique. Fang Qingshan opened the Taoist book. As soon as the Taoist book opened, Fang Qingshan raised his eyebrows. He realized that this Taoist book did not seem to be the true teachings of the Crimson Firmament Society. Instead, it should have been obtained by chance. After all, if the Crimson Firmament Society had not been so desperate to become a god emperor because of the secret advancement technique, they would not have been considered an evil sect. However, it was obvious that this Taoist book was not something good. Of course, this did not mean that this cultivation technique was not profound enough. Fang Qingshan speculated that it would not be any worse than the superior immortal inheritances in the Tao sect. However, in the blink of an eye, Fang Qingshan was pulled into darkness. The surroundings were filled with a brutal, bloodthirsty, murderous, and destructive aura. Those who did not know would think that he had returned to the Blood Sea. However, compared to the Blood Sea, this place seemed even weirder. Countless ferocious dead souls were wailing and killing each other. There was even a faint temptation, as if it wanted to subdue people and turn them into demons. After quietly comprehending, Fang Qingshan slowly opened his eyes and closed the book. It was not the time to comprehend, but this rough reading would be helpful to fill in the all-heaven Tao verification skill and even Mosquito Doran's Infinite Blood Sea Sutra. Even if it was not helpful to him, he could take it back and hand it over to the Tao sect to exchange for some Tao meaning value. Not bad at all. Fang Qingshan nodded in satisfaction. Fang Qingshan only had 4 treasures, and he couldn't find his storage space. It was hard to tell if they had been destroyed long ago, or if they had been lost somewhere else, or if there was some other reason behind it. Nevertheless, Fang Qingshan was still very satisfied with the results. Chapter 1422. Although it was a little different from the mountains of resources that he had imagined. However, Fang Qingshan also knew that this was normal. After all, under normal circumstances, everyone would spend all their resources on cultivation. Holding on to their trump cards would be useless except for their trump cards. Instead, it would be a very stupid thing to do. Of course, the most important thing was that the quality of the treasures was more important than the quantity. With these level 2 treasures, it was almost comparable to a dangerous place that Mosquito Dowrin and the others had leveled a few days ago. After all, a level 2 treasure was better than 10 or 100 level 1 treasures. In a dangerous place like the 10,000 Beast Mountain, the best resources were only high-grade level 2. The difference in value between top grade and second grade was 10 times, and there was more than one here. Contentment was everlasting happiness. Of course, if it was delivered to him, Fang Qingshan would not refuse it. After all, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. He understood the principle of accumulating sand into a tower, and he used it to the extreme. Otherwise, he would not have been able to pluck feathers from every goose that passed by. Very early on, he had developed an open-minded attitude that if he got something, he would be lucky to get it. Sure enough, these disciples of the Crimson Firmament sect are very rich. Fang Qingshan whispered to himself. Compared to the previous big movements, Mosquito Dowrin, the World Tree Doppelganger, and the One Breath Sanshin took action at the same time and looted a large area. However, the total value of the things they obtained was not even comparable to the Shadow Dagger, let alone the Soul Bead and the Hibernation Bead. However, Fang Qingshan also knew that this kind of thing also depended on luck. If it was not for the fact that he met a true disciple this time, and an elite one at that, he was afraid that he would not have so many gains. Therefore, Fang Qingshan did not give up on the other ordinary undead, zombies, and spirits just because of the good things that the elite monsters dropped. He still had to kill the ordinary undead, zombies, and spirits. Just as Fang Qingshan was advancing steadily, another person came to this area. After all, the Crimson Firmament realm was a trial ground for God Emperors. The risk factor was relatively high. Even though the Divine Emperors were suppressed in a specific area, there might still be people who knew that there were tigers in the mountains and would still go there. Or perhaps those Divine Emperors who had been sealed had broken out of the confinement and escaped. Therefore, for the sake of safety, the disciples that were released this time were all in a relatively safe and fixed area. Even though the world was vast, they were all undying realm experts. Their speed was fast, and there were many of them. Therefore, it was reasonable for them to meet each other. This time, other people barged into Fang Qingshan's range, and it wasn't just one or two. These people were all full of vigor and energy, and their auras were condensed. Moreover, there was a faint glow of treasures overflowing from their bodies. Clearly, they all had treasures on them. The leader had his hands behind his back, and his eyes were as bright as the galaxy. Behind him was a charming and beautiful young lady with a pair of soul-stirring eyes, causing people to unknowingly be addicted to them. They could kill without a trace. Or, her eyebrows were like autumn water, and her jade skin was accompanied by a cool breeze, like an orchid in an empty valley. There were also those who were extremely compassionate and full of Buddhist charm. They were dressed like monks. There was also a Taoist priest who wore a Tai Chi Bagua robe and held a horsetail whisk with his hair tied up in a bun. Of course, they were not true Buddhist cultivators or Taoist cultivators. However, because the Tao sect was all-inclusive and cultivated 3,000 Tao wills, it naturally included Buddhist and Tao wills. Why did these people gather together? There were policies from above and countermeasures from below. Even though, when entering the secret realm, according to luck, opportunities were randomly distributed. However, these people want to maximize their benefits. Therefore, they thought of ways to gather people together. Before entering, they each placed a mother-child pearl, which was similar to a locator, on them. As long as they were within a certain range, they would be able to sense it. Therefore, very quickly, they gathered together. After this group of people gathered together, they had just fought their way out of the encirclement and arrived nearby. They wanted to look around for opportunities. However, the scene in front of them made them instantly dumbfounded. Good Lord, it was a complete mess. It was as if a locust had passed through. Other than the roots, Everything that could be harvested had been taken away. Not only the treasures, but the ghosts, spirits, and zombies were also gone, as if they did not exist at all. Even Yin Qi, demon Qi, and ghost Qi in the surroundings seemed to have dissipated, as if they had been purified. What's going on? Looks like someone beat us to it. I wonder who it is. And it's so ruthless. He actually managed to scrape 3 feet of the ground. Who cares? We'll know once we go and take a look. Everyone followed Fang Qingshan's aura. While Fang Qingshan was harvesting quickly, his ears suddenly twitched. Not long after, he heard a series of footsteps. He turned around and saw a group of people. It's you. Fang Qingshan did not know them, but they knew Fang Qingshan. After all, he was the brightest dark horse in this inner disciple competition and had the attitude of winning first place. They immediately exclaimed, "Greetings, senior brother Fang." When these people saw Fang Qingshan, they were shocked at first, but then they hurriedly bowed. It was not that they did not have a foothold in the Daoul sect. Although they were not comparable to a veteran top force like the Jiang family, the sect still had a God Emperor old ancestor, especially the leader, whose family's old ancestor was a peak God Emperor. Because of this, they had a better understanding of the inside story. They knew that Fang Qingshan was now in high demand in the Daoul sect, and his status was even higher than Jiang, Overlord, and the eldest true disciple. Even if they broke through to the God Emperor realm, they might not be as good as Fang Qingshan. Not to mention his own talent, just the timeless arc alone was enough to put him in a special position. Moreover, just the fact that Fang Qingshan's cultivation had reached the peak late-stage immortal realm was enough for them to look up to him. The strong were respected. Although Fang Qingshan had just entered the sect, his cultivation was high, so everyone addressed him as senior brother. Greetings, junior brothers. Fang Qingshan raised his eyebrows and returned the greeting. However, at the same time, Mosquito Daorin and the others did not stop moving. Instead, they sped up, making everyone feel tired. With his cultivation, would he be afraid of them snatching the resources? Most importantly, he had looted them so cleanly. If it wasn't for Fang Qingshan's unlimited potential and high cultivation, just this 1 meter higher sky method was enough to make them stop. After all, the strong wanted to save face too. However, Fang Qingshan did not care about this at all. He was more concerned about the benefits. If he was fast, he would get it. Since this person was already here, he had to speed up. After all, if the other party collected the resources, it would not be good for him to snatch them. Senior brother, I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it. The leading disciple was an elite disciple of the Kong clan, a large clan in the Daoul sect. His name was Kong Chong. He subconsciously ignored Fang Qingshan's shamelessness. A thought flashed through his mind, and a glimmer of light flashed through his eyes. If you have something to say, just say it. Fang Qingshan did not deny it. I know there's a cave abode nearby. I wonder if senior brother is interested in exploring it with me? Chapter 1423. Kong Chong looked at Fang Qingshan with an expectant face. Actually, it was just an idea he came up with on the spur of the moment. Oh, what cave mansion? Why don't you go there alone? Why me? Fang Qingshan rolled his eyes. He didn't agree or disagree. He asked several questions. He knew that there was no free lunch in this world. Those who were polite must have something to ask. Those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. A cave mansion must be a great opportunity. If he could eat it, why would he share it with others? It seemed that this cave mansion wasn't ordinary, and its danger level skyrocketed. Indeed, Kong Chang's next words confirmed Fang Qingshan's thought. It's a God Emperor level cave mansion. There might be a God Emperor level soul in there. I'm not his equal opponent. That's why I want to invite you to come with me. Kong Chong didn't conceal it. He couldn't conceal it either. Thus, he said straightforwardly, God Emperor? I can't deal with him. Fang Qingshan was moved. However, after thinking for a while, he shook his head resolutely. Although the opportunity was good, he needed to see if he had the appetite or not. Although his cultivation base had reached the peak of late immortal realm, and he had the timeless arc, The peak of immortal realm experts were just SOSO in his hands. However, he couldn't deal with a god emperor. It wasn't at the same level. Even if he had to deal with 10 peak of immortal realm experts, he didn't want to deal with a god emperor who had just entered the realm. Because even if he couldn't defeat the former, he could still run away. Facing a ladder, he couldn't even run away. Instead of expecting something unrealistic, the resources in front of him made him feel more at ease. Senior, you don't need to reject me. Let me finish first. Seeing that Fang Qingshan had rejected them cleanly, the leader of the group panicked. Crimson Heaven Realm was a God Emperor level trial ground. Even their forefathers couldn't enter it. It wasn't easy for them to encounter such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they didn't seize it, it would be a waste of God's gift. They would be struck by lightning. If they missed it, they didn't know if they would have another chance. After all, Crimson Heaven Realm only opened for God Emperors. However, not many of them had the confidence to break through to the God Emperor level. Even for a God Emperor, it wasn't easy for him to enter. The most important thing was that the risk factor wasn't high. Compared to exploring the secrets of the myriad heavens and exploring the myriad worlds, one's safety was guaranteed here. If they really couldn't do it, they could crush their identity medallion. Once they succeeded, the rewards they would obtain would be sufficient to greatly benefit them in their future cultivation. However, even so, they would still act according to their capabilities. Having the token did not mean that one could sit back and relax. In the past, there were people who used the token to run amok, but in the end, these people all met with mishaps. Kong Chong had a token, a group of people, and a cave abode disciple. Why didn't he go there himself? Of course not. They knew their limits. They knew that even if they had the tokens, they would still be in grave danger. Even if he wanted to go, he would only take the risk at the last moment. However, after seeing Fang Qingshan, Kong Chong immediately changed his mind. He felt that he could give it a try in advance. After all, they had witnessed the scene of Fang Qingshan undergoing the heavenly tribulation with their own eyes. Furthermore, they had heard from their patriarch that with Fang Qingshan's current strength, even the eldest true disciple and Jiang overlord, who had yet to break through, might not be able to defeat him. Otherwise, why would the intersect competition's first place be almost set in stone? The future eldest direct disciple, Jiang overlord, and the current eldest direct disciple might not be able to defeat a god emperor, but they could escape unscathed from a god emperor. Since Fang Qingshan was about the same level as them, he could obviously do it too, especially since the god emperors here were slightly weaker than real god emperors. As such, their safety was naturally guaranteed. Of course, even with Fang Qingshan, they did not bite off more than they could chew. They chose a cave abode of an early god emperor. Of course, this early god emperor was not chosen at random. After all, a high realm did not necessarily mean that there were many good things. Some god emperors were not even comparable to immortal emperors. For example, many ordinary god emperor elders in the Tao sect could not compare to the wealth of Fang Qingshan, Jiang overlord, and the others. Fortunately, after several generations of exploration, they knew the Crimson Heaven Realm like the back of their hands. In terms of understanding of the Crimson Heaven Realm, Fang Qingshan was naturally far inferior to them. Although he had learned a thing or two in the Tao Palace, there was no introduction of the specific situation in the Crimson Heaven Realm. These were all summarized by the veteran forces in the Tao sect who had participated in the encirclement of the Crimson Heaven Realm, as well as the disciples who had participated in the trial of the Crimson Heaven Realm. With them leading the way, Fang Qingshan and the others arrived in front of the cave abode very quickly. The cave abode was backed by a cliff, and in front of the door was a surging river. Of course, this should not have been the case. The cave abode was not in this place, but because of the sect-exterminating war, the river and mountains changed course. We're here. After several twists and turns, under the guidance of Kong Chong, Fang Qingshan and the others finally arrived in front of Stone Door. Seeing the cave abode, everyone immediately judged that this was a great opportunity. Fang Qingshan and the leader Kong Chong were still calm, but the others began to get excited. In the path of cultivation, wealth, companionship, method, and location were at the top, and its importance could be easily imagined. Although there was no lack of people who relied on their great willpower and wisdom to soar into the sky, there were very few of them. Most people still require the assistance of resources, and fortuitous encounters were a type of resources. Especially for those who followed Kong Chong, they were not as talented as Fong Qingshan and the others, and their background were not that good. Cultivating to the immortal realm, if there was no opportunity, it was almost the end. Fortunately, this time, the Crimson Heaven realm opened, and they followed Kong Chong, met Fong Qingshan, and came to the cave abode of the Divine Emperor. Although they might only get some leftovers, as long as the cave abode was not destroyed, it was enough for them to make a lot of money, and they might even be able to advance further. After all, the abode of a divine emperor naturally contained all sorts of heavenly and earthly treasures that the divine emperor had collected himself, as well as all sorts of Taoist books and numinous treasures. If it weren't for junior brother Kong, I might not have been able to find such a remote place. Fong Qingshan looked around and was a little surprised. He was sure that if it weren't for Kong Chong leading the way, he wouldn't know how to get here. After all, there were no souls, departed spirits, zombies, or any natural treasures here. The spiritual qi here was not abundant either. Even if Fong Qingshan wanted to scour the place, he would have missed it. Actually, it's all thanks to our ancestors. They followed the clues and searched time and time again before finally finding this place. Kong Chong explained. Fong Qingshan nodded and said, "If we want to enter the cave abode, the first step is to break the formation. Do you have any rules?" Chapter 1424. This is a typical 5-elemental spell formation. I already know the 5 nodes of it. As long as 5 people who cultivate the 5-elemental magic power hold down the 5 nodes at the same time, and senior brother Fong breaks the eye of the formation, we will be able to break the spell formation in one strike. Kong Chong had a plan in his mind. Hearing Fong Qingshan's question, he answered immediately. "If that's the case, let's do it." Fong Qingshan nodded. This method of breaking the formation was exactly the same as what Laozi and the others had done in Hongjun. It was the simplest and most practical method. Immediately, Kong Chong picked out 4 people from the crowd behind him. There was a total of 5 people, including himself. They stood at the 5 nodes in front of the formation. "Start." Kong Chong gave the order. The 5 of them attacked at the same time. Streams of true qi that were either domineering, powerful, indestructible, agile, ever-changing, strange, ethereal, free, peaceful, mellow, profound, dark, cold, and violent surged toward the 5 nodes. In an instant, the protective formation of the entire cave abode could not help but freeze. Break! Fong Qingshan had been waiting for the chance. Seeing the flaw of the formation, he attacked immediately. He took out the reincarnation all and pointed. With a ripping sound, the great formation was broken. After all, Fong Qingshan and the others were all immortal realm experts, and they were familiar with formations. They found the nodes according to the situation. The formation had been through a catastrophe, so it was broken. The most important thing was that there was no one controlling it. That was why they could break it easily. Rumble. The door of the cave residence opened. The sound was heavy, rolling and rolling, with a sense of vicissitudes. As the stone door was pushed open, a strange aura spread out. It was a bit heavy. It was a kind of rotten, decadent, desolate, broken aura mixed with yin qi and ghost qi. Everyone's hearts went cold when they sensed this. It can't be. The cave residence wouldn't be destroyed, would it? If so, wouldn't it be a waste of their efforts? Although he had a bad feeling in his heart, he even wanted to rush in and see how many were left. However, out of caution, the crowd did not rush in at once. Instead, they carefully confirmed that there was no danger before entering in a single file. The distance of a single step was like the distance between heaven and earth. Everyone took a step forward, and it was as if they were stepping on air from the edge of a cliff. Their bodies turned into shooting stars, falling straight down. Who would have thought that there would actually be a spatial folding and teleportation technique at the entrance of the gate? Everyone was shocked. They thought that they had fallen into a trap or ambush, so they subconsciously used their protective divine abilities and spirit treasures. His heart was in his throat, and his body was tense, ready to strike at any moment. Fang Qingshan, on the other hand, was not flustered at all. Every time he encountered a major event, he would condense his qi. Most importantly, he had confidence in his heart, so he was not flustered at all. However, his state of mind had entered a state of tranquility like an ancient well. His body shone brightly, and celestial music rose in spirals. Calm your mind, concentrate, and visualize. The next moment, darkness assaulted him, and he lost consciousness. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in another world. The expected danger didn't come, and everyone's hanging hearts were immediately relieved. However, the environment in front of them did not make their mood any better. Everyone looked at each other and walked in anxiously. The cave abode was dark and in a mess. Although it was slightly better than the outside, it was still gloomy and gloomy. Fortunately, the situation was not serious, and the deeper they went, the better the situation became. Seeing this, Kong Chong and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief. They were relieved. However, along the way, Fang Qingshan felt that something was wrong. He had a strange and uneasy feeling in his heart. However, this was just a vague feeling, and it could not even be counted as a sudden impulse. After looking carefully, he did not find anything. Fang Qingshan could only think that he was suspicious, so he did not mention it. Along the way, the deeper they went, the better the situation became. It seemed that only the periphery of the cave abode had been damaged. They arrived at the core of the cave abode. Everyone's eyes lit up. The scenery of the lake and the mountains, the shadows of the water in the sky, and the lush green, vast and boundless. All kinds of heaven and earth treasures were everywhere, and the quality was far above that of the outside world. There were only a few first-grade spiritual roots, and they were all rare species with special effects. Most of them were second-grade, and there was even a third-grade spiritual root. For a moment, even Fang Qingshan's doubts were relieved. After all, during the extermination of the Scarlet Firmament sect, even the heaven, earth, mountains, and rivers were changed, and the owner died. It would be strange if the cave abode was not damaged at all. With such a thought in mind, he looked at the scene in front of him, and he was delighted. In particular, he did not expect that there would be a third-grade spiritual root here. Although it was not a third-grade treasure, it was obviously more precious than a third-grade treasure. However, this was also a matter of benevolence and wisdom. However, even if they ignored the third-grade spiritual root, the third-grade treasure was even better. Just the third-grade treasure alone was enough to make Fang Qingshan and the others breathe heavily. After all, third-grade treasures were the standard for a deity emperor, but not every deity emperor had one. It seems that we made the right choice to come here. Fang Qingshan and the others said to themselves at the same time. Moreover, this was only the outside of the palace. The things inside the palace were not inferior to those here. He saw palaces coiled around, buildings flying in the sky, pictures of birds and beasts, colorful paintings of immortals and spirits. Strands of auspicious light and auspicious air hung down from above, condensing into copper lamps and purple chimes. When the golden wind blew, the lamps made tinkling noise. Using his finger as a sword, he swiped it across his eyes and executed his ocular perception technique. He could clearly sense that there were beams of light dancing around in the depths of the palaces. They were like dragons, full of spirituality. Obviously, there must be a precious treasure inside, and it was at least a third-grade treasure. This was because the treasures were purer and more advanced than the hibernation pearl that Fang Qingshan had just obtained, and they were not inferior to the third-grade spiritual root in the periphery. Let's go. Seeing this scene, how could the others hold back? They could not wait to rush over. Wait. Fang Qingshan was no exception. However, as soon as he took a step forward, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He stopped in midair and hurriedly called out to the others, "Don't rush. There's no hurry. Why do I feel like something is wrong? Senior brother Fang is too cautious." Lu Mei, The disciple who looked like a demonic woman who followed behind Kong Chong said with a smile. Yeah. The disciple who cultivated Buddha type, Tao intent, and dressed like a monk, Wang Run, echoed. Speaking of which, he was the most anxious among the crowd. This was because he seemed to feel an inexplicable voice calling out to him. He knew that this should be a great opportunity. If he could obtain it, not to mention the cultivation of the immortal realm, it might even be possible for him to become a deity emperor. When the others heard this, they also echoed in agreement. Chapter 1425. Wine flushed one's face, and money moved one's heart. Not everyone would be able to suppress the greed in their hearts when the treasures were right before them. It was normal for them to lose their composure. This was especially true for those who were already lacking in resources. A penny stumped heroes, not to mention these treasures of heaven and earth. Even if it was Fong Qingshan, if not for the sudden impulse in his heart, he would have taken a step in as well. Actually, I have the same feeling. It's better to be careful. Kong Chong had a treasure in his hand. Similar to Jiang Mingyue's danger sense physique, he also sensed a bad premonition. However, just like Fong Qingshan, he could only sense it but not express it. There was no concrete evidence, so he could only say, "We're already here. Don't fail miserably." I think the two senior brothers are really worrying too much. As long as we deal with it carefully, with the abilities of Fong Qingshan and senior brother Kong, there won't be any accidents. Meng Changchun, who is the disciple who cultivated the Taoist will, said indifferently, "Although this is the core area, the divine emperor should be sealed in the palace. There shouldn't be any big problems now." Kong Chong and Fong Qingshan felt that it was reasonable. Under normal circumstances, the ultimate experts would guard the most important places, such as the third-grade treasures. Although this was the core area, it wasn't the most important place. Moreover, the two of them hadn't discovered where the problem was. It wasn't a solution to keep delaying like this. They could only take one step at a time. The two of them looked at each other and nodded. This time, Lu Mei and the others were instantly overjoyed. Without saying anything, they rushed over. Resources, wealth, cultivation, at this moment, they could only feel these things surging towards them. When Fong Qingshan and Kong Chong saw this, they looked at each other and could not help but shrug their shoulders. They followed suit and walked over with them. This time, Fong Qingshan was not like before, sweeping away all the fallen leaves in his path. Instead, he headed straight for the rank 3 core spirit root. Firstly, it was difficult for one to understand the vast ocean. Apart from Mount Wu, there were no clouds. With a rank 3 spirit root in front of him, how could he care about these things? Of course, the most important thing was that this time, he wasn't the only one exploring the secret. He had the meat, so he had to let the others drink the soup. Otherwise, it would seem too greedy. However, as he walked, Fong Qingshan realized that something was wrong. This was because there seemed to be no end to this path. The distance between him and his destination did not seem to have shortened at all. Most importantly, the more they walked, the calmer their mood became, and they didn't have the slightest impatience like before. It seemed as if the treasures of heaven and earth and the surroundings were like passing clouds to them. All of them became desireless and had no desires. Not good. Fong Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. With a thought, the bell of chaos immediately appeared above his head. As the bell swung, regardless of whether it was the sun, moon, stars, earth, water, fire, wind outside the bell, or the mountains, rivers, earth, and desolation inside the bell, all sorts of scenes flowed like a horse on a platform, dreamy and blurry. 5-colored light illuminated the heavens, and a sacred power of the chaos shook the entire universe. Clang, clang, clang. A series of resonant chimes instantly broke the previous calm and tranquil state of a person who had reached the end of his life. Oh my God, even I almost fell for it. For a moment, Fong Qingshan's expression was extremely ugly. Then, something that made his face even more gloomy happened. He had already reminded them and even took out the bell of chaos, causing such a huge commotion but Kong Chong, who was beside him, and Lu Mei, who was in front of him, did not react at all. Fang Qingshan's pupils constricted, and he reached out to grab Kong Chong, who was beside him. However, he didn't expect that it was like a flower in a mirror or a moon in the water. It turned out that the Kong Chong beside him had been replaced by an illusion at some point. Fang Qingshan gasped. What a powerful formation, causing them to unknowingly fall into the trap before silently separating them. Not only that, he even managed to create several realistic illusions. Naturally, this was also because Fang Qingshan, Kong Chong, and the others weren't familiar with him. Otherwise, they would have long since noticed something amiss. Even so, it was still an incredible feat. Furthermore, this formation could actually affect one's mind unknowingly, making one lose all desires and desires. In the end, wouldn't everything be empty and everything would be over? Perhaps it was because Fang Qingshan had broken free from the influence of the formation, or because he had touched the illusion, or because of some other reason. The scene in front of him disappeared like a bubble. When he saw it again, it was a completely different scene. However, he saw that in front of him, there was a lotus flower swaying in the air that seemed to be far away, separated by countless space-time, but it also seemed to be very close and within reach. This lotus flower could not be compared to the 36th-grade creation green lotus in Fang Qingshan's mind, let alone the everlasting lotus. However, it was far above the red lotus of hellfire in his hand. They were not on the same level at all. Its entire body emitted the smell of the golden lotus of karma, and it was filled with Buddhist charms. Fang Qingshan knew that this was a level 3 spiritual root. The aura that he felt earlier should be from this item. The scene in front of him was caused by this treasure. Back then, the owner of the cave used this treasure as the foundation to set up the Elysium Lotus Formation. As a result, although the owner died and the cave was damaged, the formation was still intact due to the uniqueness of the level 3 spiritual root. As a result, Fang Qingshan and the rest actually fell into the formation unknowingly. Although he was trapped in the formation, Fang Qingshan did not panic. Firstly, it was normal for him to be calm in the face of danger. Moreover, panicking would not help solve the problem at all. Instead, it would make the situation worse. Furthermore, although the formation looked impressive, it did not give him a sense of danger. Fang Qingshan was confident that he could break the formation, so he did not panic. There were only two methods to break the formation: technique and brute force. Technique was like picking a lock. As long as one had the key, it was just a matter of inserting it and turning it. Brute force was like smashing a door. It required an infinite amount of strength. If one relied on technique, they would need to have a deep understanding of the formation. They would need to break the formation by breaking the formation inscriptions, nodes, and eye of the formation. That way, the formation would not be damaged, and there would be no backlash. It was just like how Fang Qingshan and the rest broke the protective formation. As for brute force, it was much simpler. They just needed to destroy the formation inscriptions, nodes, and eye of the formation. However, the difficulty would increase exponentially, and they would have to bear the backlash of the formation. After all, the formation itself was a cheat that allowed the weak to defeat the strong. Chapter 1426. Generally speaking, everyone liked to break through the formation with techniques. After all, not everyone could be invincible, and unbreakable. Techniques were different. As long as one understood the formation, they could do it. Given a fulcrum, they could move the earth. It was like facing a master of body refining. In a violent battle, it would naturally be a head-on confrontation. It would naturally look fiery and exciting. But without the strength, they would suffer the consequences of their own actions. As long as one found the weak point of the opponent, one could kill them in one blow. Although Fang Qingshan recognized the origin of this formation, he also had a good understanding of formations. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a formation expert. He also had the 5 elements reincarnation formation, the Zodion star formation, and the 9 bends Yellow River formation. However, his expertise was in setting up and using formations. When it came to breaking formations, he was really not good at it. Moreover, time was tight. There was a time limit for the opening of the Crimson Heaven Realm. Moreover, they were still in the middle of the competition. Fang Qingshan did not have the mood to slowly deduce the method to break the formation, although he also had the book of Luo River Diagram. If he wanted it, he could do it, but it would be a waste of time. Since he did not want to go the technical way, the violent way was naturally the simplest way. As his voice fell, Fang Qingshan waved his hand, and boundless sword qi suddenly erupted. Colorful brilliance shone, like a peacock spreading its tail. There were 5 elements rotating, life and death alternating, and space-time entangling. The fiery sword qi directly illuminated the entire formation space, causing a loud bang. As for the human figures and the phantoms of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, they all disappeared at this moment like flowers in a mirror. However, after the sword qi erupted, the formation space was still the formation space. The human figures and the phantoms of heavenly materials and earthly treasures appeared again, and there was not even the slightest change. It was as if nothing had happened. It was as if everything that happened just now was just a breeze, causing a little ripple, and then quickly returning to calmness. The only difference was the surrounding environment. Fang Qingshan didn't know if the explosion had triggered some emergency mechanism, or if the environment here had changed, or if there were other reasons, but the scene in front of Fang Qingshan had changed. At this moment, they were in a sea of lotuses. Here, they could see lotuses, smell the fragrance of lotuses, hear the chanting of Buddhist scriptures, and feel the bliss of the Buddha. Wasn't the level 3 lotus of bliss that they saw earlier in the middle of the sea? With this spiritual root as the center, the lotuses spread out in all directions. There were red lotuses, white lotuses, blue lotuses, yellow lotuses, and purple lotuses. It was truly the heaven-connecting lotus leaves boundless jade, and the sun-reflecting lotus flower was exceptionally red. However, what really caught Fang Qingshan's attention were the kind men and women, arhats and bodhisattvas, sitting on the lotus flowers. These people exuded a sense of piety from head to toe. They were all chanting Buddhist scriptures. At a glance, they were all disciples of Buddha. Fang Qingshan even found a few familiar faces among them. These people were none other than the inner sect disciples of the Tao, sect who had entered with them earlier. Fang Qingshan took a deep breath. He knew that these people were doomed. Although Fang Qingshan did not know much about the specific situation of the Lotus of Bliss formation, he had a rough idea of the general situation. This array formation was different from the Great Heavenly Cycle Stellar Array and the Great Nine Bends Yellow River Array. It was not a pure defensive array formation, nor was it a killing array formation. Instead, it was a supreme array formation that aided in the cultivation of Buddhist Dharma. Those who practiced Buddhism, or those who practice Buddhism like Wang Run, would not be suppressed here. Instead, they would be like fish in water, and once they started cultivating, they would advance at a tremendous pace. However, if they were not, the situation would be completely different. The better one treated one's own people. The crueler one would be to outsiders. If one had great willpower, wisdom, and endurance, they would still be able to persist and maintain their sense of self. For example, Fang Qingshan had used his willpower to break free from the shackles of the formation. However, if one's mind was not firm, or if there was a flaw in one's mind, one's soul would be eroded by the Buddhist aura in the formation if one stayed in the formation for a long time. One would become a puppet that was devoted to Buddhism, a walking corpse. It was as if the Buddhists had forcefully expiated them. Buddhism was not only compassionate, but it was also domineering. Most importantly, the edification power of this array formation would continue to strengthen after one resisted. Therefore, in the Buddhist sects, this formation was not only used for cultivation, but it was also used to purify evil demons and opponents. Countless evil demons and hegemons did not escape this calamity, and all became the most loyal Buddhist soldiers and Dharma protectors of the Buddhists. Therefore, even though this formation was not a killing formation, it did not mean that this place was safe. On the contrary, it was even more dangerous because it was not a killing formation. It was like boiling a frog in warm water. If it was boiling water, one would be able to sense the danger as soon as one entered it. From there, one would be able to make the wisest decision, either to escape or to resist. However, if it was warm water, one would be paralyzed and slowly eroded. By the time one reacted, it would already be too late. Otherwise, with Fang Qingshan's ability, how could he not sense the danger and fall into the trap? This formation was originally a level 2 Peerless Grade formation. It would not be too much of a problem to trap a level 3 Divine Emperor, let alone a level 3 Spiritual Root, with Buddhist or a Lotus platform as the core of the formation. It was no wonder that it was so silent. The disciples that Fang Qingshan saw had obviously fallen into the trap. They did not even have the time to take out their defensive token and were expiated into puppets without any intelligence, just like the souls outside. What a pity, what a pity. They thought that it was a great opportunity, but they ended up losing their lives in vain. As for the other kind men and women, they were also expiated enemies, demons, or people who had mistakenly fallen into the trap. It did not matter if they were expiated, but the more they were expiated, the stronger the formation would be. This was also within the cave dwelling. Although the outer area was destroyed, the interior seemed to be intact. It turned out that it was not only because of the level 3 spiritual root, but also because of the assistance of these puppets to repair and maintain the formation. From a moment Fang Qingshan discovered that something was amiss, to the moment he attacked, to now, it seemed like a long time had passed. But in actual fact, it happened in the blink of an eye. As mentioned earlier, this spirit formation was not only capable of subtly enlightening one, but it was also capable of forcibly enlightening one after they reacted to it. It did not take long for Fang Qingshan to be surrounded by lotuses. These lotuses were getting bigger and bigger, and the fragrance they gave off was getting stronger. The kind men and women on the lotuses were getting more and more devout, and their chanting of scriptures was getting louder and louder. The thoughts of expiation, conversion, and entering the state of bliss seemed to have disregarded all defenses as they poured into his mind. Chapter 14:27. What a domineering Buddhist edification! Fang Qingshan exclaimed in his heart. This array was indeed worthy of being an array that forcibly edified a divine emperor. Not only did he fall into the trap because he wasn't prepared for it, but the sudden increase in power that ignored all defenses also caught Fang Qingshan off guard. Fortunately, although the edification power was powerful, it was still within the range that Fang Qingshan could endure. Even if he didn't resist, he could still persevere with his willpower. After all, he had experienced the eternal power, the influence of the God Emperor's Tao voice, and the sharpness of the lightning tribulation of the great Tao. If he didn't have some resistance, wouldn't these things and Fang Qingshan be too useless? However, there was a limit to one's strength. The power of the array continued to increase, and there seemed to be no end to it. If this continued, he would be the one to suffer. After all, it was a thankless task for one person to go against a top-notch second-level array maintained by a third-level spirit root. Therefore, Fang Qingshan furrowed his brows. He wanted to attack the enemy's weakness, which was also the weakness. However, his eyes flashed, and he used an eye technique to look around. However, he discovered that it was as if he was looking at flowers in the fog, or the moon in the water. He couldn't see through the details and see through the affairs of the world. He used the river diagram of the Luo to deduce it, but he didn't find any clues or flaws. Obviously, this array was not to be underestimated. He attacked with all his strength and took out the 5 elements reincarnation diagram. It wasn't that he wanted to break the array. After all, he had already tested it before. He just wanted to make a slight fluctuation in the array so that he could use the river diagram of the Luo to deduce it. However, his efforts were in vain. The array only fluctuated slightly like a breeze, but he still couldn't find a way out. Looks like I can only use the timeless Arkansas, Fang Qingshan sighed. However, he didn't have any other thoughts. After all, he knew from the beginning that this expedition wouldn't be easy. After all, this was the Divine Emperor's cave residence. Although the Divine Emperor had fallen, his obsession and corpse had turned into an undead, a zombie. Even if it couldn't compare to the original strength of the original body, as long as half of it remained, it was not something that an immortal could compare to. Even if he didn't use the timeless arc now, he would go all out in the palace. Of course, Fang Qingshan was also fascinated by this. Anyway, his cultivation base had reached the peak of late stage of immortal realm. He wasn't far from the God Emperor realm. Of course, he wanted to know the God Emperor's competence. However, at the same time, he also knew that the Emperor God was not someone he could deal with. Therefore, he did not float up and suppress the restlessness in his heart. Fortunately, the opportunity had come. Except for a few, the God Emperors in the Crimson Heaven realm were much weaker than their peers. Coincidentally, he was the best experimental subject for Fang Qingshan. Even if he wasn't a match for Zhang Xian in the end, he still had the life-saving token. Everything was perfect. Therefore, after listening to Kong Chang's words, he decisively agreed to come and explore. Not only because of resources, but also because of opponents. Resources were hard to come by, but so were opponents. If he wanted to deal with the Emperor God, he would have to use all his means. However, Fang Qingshan didn't expect that he would have to use all of his power that fast. Moreover, he didn't expect that he would encounter a peerless great formation that had a rank 3 spirit root as the formation outside the palace. He didn't even realize that he had fallen into the trap and had to take action in advance. Go! Fang Qingshan pointed, and a formation scroll flew out. Previously, he had said that there were 2 ways to break the formation. One was to use techniques, and the other was to break the formation with brute force. Although Fang Qingshan had some understanding of the formation Tao, and he could be considered a great expert, he still didn't have enough power to break the Elysium Lotus Womb Great Formation in a short time. Formations weren't that easy to break, especially those auxiliary formations. They didn't pursue the ultimate offensive or defensive power, so they didn't have obvious flaws. If he didn't have the Elysium Lotus, it would be better. With this item to suppress the Great Formation, even the Book of Luo and the River Diagram couldn't find a way out of the mess. Of course, it wasn't that Fang Qingshan couldn't use techniques to break the formation, he just needed time. However, as time went on, the pressure he would have to bear would increase day by day. Most importantly, he would have to waste a lot of time collecting resources. He could break the formation at the fastest speed and collect more resources. Why would he waste his time here? Plus, they were all from the same sect. Kong Chang was fine, but the other disciples wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Therefore, he could only break the formation with brute force. Of course, there were many ways to break the formation with brute force. One was similar to Pangu, who fought against the world alone. With a swing of his axe or a strike of lightning, he could destroy anything, no matter what it was. However, it was obvious that Fang Qingshan couldn't do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used the timeless Arkansas. If he had the cultivation of a God Emperor, he could give it a try. Another way was to borrow the power of a spiritual treasure. Another way was to break the formation with another formation. This time, Fang Qingshan chose the latter. There was a reason why he chose the latter instead of using the timeless arc to break the formation. It was a decision that Fang Qingshan made after careful consideration. First of all, although the timeless arc was sharp, it was only a supreme treasure. The most powerful one was the Life and Death Gourd, which was only a level 2 high-grade supreme treasure. The overall strength of the timeless arc should be around a half-step God Emperor. However, this formation was suppressed by a level 3 supreme treasure. Although no one was activating it, it shouldn't be underestimated. As the saying went, the first spurt of energy would weaken, and the third would be exhausted. What if the timeless arc couldn't break the formation by breaking the formation? Although he needed to be courageous and diligent, he also needed to be cautious. Most importantly, Fang Qingshan still had a hint of uneasiness in his heart. This hint of uneasiness was the same as when he mistakenly entered the Elysium Lotus Formation. Logically speaking, this hint of uneasiness should come from this formation. However, Fang Qingshan felt that there was something else. Therefore, he planned to break the formation with another formation. This way, the consumption would be small. Even if he couldn't break the formation, there would still be room for maneuver. The most important thing was to hold back in case of any accidents. Moreover, he wasn't the only one in this formation. Everyone was exploring together. He couldn't just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor while he did everything. If that was the case, what was the use of having them? Why should he share a piece of the pie with them? Forget about what happened previously. Now that he was caught off guard, even he fell for it. He didn't ask them to do anything. However, once he started to break the formation with another formation, it wouldn't make sense if the formation didn't wake them up. These people weren't easy to deal with, especially Kang Chong. He was a top existence outside of the top 10 intersect disciples. The Kang family was one of the top families in the Tao E sect, and he had many trump cards. Once the formation revealed a flaw, he would make a move and use his trump card. It wouldn't be difficult to break the formation. Chapter 1428. Why were the rogue cultivators so envious of the disciples of the major sects? It was because even if they were less talented, they could use resources to improve their cultivation. Even if they were unscrupulous, there would be people who would help them clean up after them. Every time they encountered a desperate situation, they would have an endless supply of trump cards. Therefore, the rogue cultivators felt inferior when facing the disciples of the major sects, and few dared to provoke them. That was because even if they could defeat the young ones, the older ones would be drawn out, and a group of people would be drawn out. The most important thing was that if the snake was not killed, it would be difficult to remove the roots. Every time they encountered a crisis, there would be a protector to help them. For example, Uncle Wang, who was with Jiang Mingyue, had protective talismans, spirit treasures, and so on. Fang Qingshan knew this, so he did not use the timeless arc to charge around. Instead, he took out the Zhoutian star formation. Buzz, the heavenly cycle constellation diagram, flew out. As soon as it unfolded, a river of stars appeared in the sky. It was as if one was standing in the starry sky. In the depths of the void, countless stars were competing with each other, emitting an incomparably blazing light at this moment. The light gave off the feeling that there were over 1,000 suns that illuminated the world. Good Lord, 10 suns in the sky could cause an uproar in the desolation world, let alone thousands of suns. That was not the end. The countless suns moved in a mysterious trajectory in an instant. Then, rays of cold, white starlight gathered from all directions towards the core. They gathered again to form a realm of stars. The power of the stars in the sky. This was the gathering of all the power of the Zhoutian star. At this moment, the stars were shining, and the sun and moon were dim. It seemed to have sensed that the Zhoutian star formation was not to be trifled with. At this moment, the Elysium Lotus Formation also erupted. Although the main power of this formation was used to enlighten others, it was able to enlighten others forcefully, which meant that it was not a simple auxiliary formation. At the core, a lotus flower that was as large as a star slowly bloomed. The meaning of infinite bliss spread out. Quietly, on the lotus sat a pure, flawless, and perfect Buddha. This was none other than the spiritual manifestation of the level 3 spiritual root, the lotus of bliss. Level 3 cardinal treasures. No, even level 1 cardinal treasures had spirituality, let alone level 3 cardinal treasures. Level 4 cardinal treasures could be used as celestial emperors. Although level 3 cardinal treasures were slightly weaker, even if they didn't take human form, they could still be treated as real living beings with their spirituality. This Buddha was wearing a Buddhist robe completely formed from the golden light of wish energy. He had a kind and benevolent countenance, and when one saw his appearance, they couldn't help but think of the vastness of the starry sky. When they saw him, they felt like they saw wisdom, virtue, and compassion. Subconsciously, everyone felt a desire to serve him to prostrate themselves in worship to convert to the Buddha. From then on, the lamp would be destroyed, and there would be no more desires. The Buddha is merciful. The Dharma is boundless. The Buddha is merciful. The Dharma is boundless. At the next moment, all the virtuous men and women, the arhats and the bodhisattvas sitting on the lotus platforms on the sea of lotus shouted in unison. Their bodies shone brightly, and under the illumination of countless golden lights, the power was no weaker than the gathering stars above their heads. Instead, they stood as equals. At the next moment, the stars fell, and the starlight shone directly on the world. It was as if the sky had collapsed. At the same time, the Buddha's light gathered, and the Buddha opened his hand, raising his arm to support the sky. The Buddha on the lotus platform of bliss stood up, and his body was surrounded by the Buddha's light. He pointed one hand to the sky and the other to the ground, and an overbearing aura that could suppress the world rose. Boom, boom, boom. The starlight and the Buddha's light collided, and an apocalyptic commotion erupted. The entire cave seemed like it couldn't hold on any longer and was about to shatter. Tens of thousands of miles of land disappeared in an instant, and the chaotic aura surged like a raging wave, surging in all directions. A supreme aura of destruction and slaughter swept out like a tide, and it wanted to obliterate this expanse of the heavens and the earth. Buzz! At the next moment, a mighty force descended, and there were light patterns floating in the air. Dazzling spiritual light burst out, and an inexplicable and majestic power awakened, as if it had cast an indestructible divine dam. The chaotic waves collapsed, and the supreme aura melted. No power could invade this place of sleep. Fangqing Shan was no stranger to this power. Whether it was in the desolation world, the world tree itself, or the calamity realm, he had experienced it personally. This was the will of heaven and earth that belonged to the cave world. Although it was called a cave world, it was a real top-level world. Even a world like the desolation world couldn't bear the cultivation of a sage. Could an ordinary cave world accommodate a divine emperor? The reason why it didn't move before was because it didn't have a master. Even in the war of extermination, it was also injured, and the will of heaven and earth fell into a deep sleep. However, now that the cave world was about to be destroyed, it naturally alarmed the will of heaven and earth. Puff! At the same time, Kong Chong and the others, who were still immersed in the purification of the array, suddenly woke up. When they came back to their senses, they couldn't help but be shocked. Like Fangqing Shan, they obviously didn't expect that they would fall into the trap so easily. At the same time, they felt lucky that they called Fangqing Shan along. Otherwise, they might really be in trouble this time. They didn't even have time to use the life-saving token before falling into the trap. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? As for what Kong Chong and the others were thinking, Fangqing Shan didn't know. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care, because the top priority was to break the array. After all, this top-level second-level array was not something that the Zhodian star array could contend with. After holding on for a while, the Zhodian star array also reached its limit. If it was only Fangqing Shan, it would be fine. Now that there were helpers, and they wanted a share of the loot, how could he not help them? How could they just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? Go! Kong Chong acted decisively when he heard that. Without saying a word, he took out a talisman and pinched it with force. At the next moment, a ray of light that was not inferior to the shining stars and the Buddhist golden light of expiation erupted. Following that, an innate sovereign walked out from the depths of space-time. His aura was like an abyss, and as he walked over, it was like a tidal wave sweeping out. Space-time, karma, fate, and everything in the world were torn apart. He was like the only god in the world, bringing with him boundless light that illuminated every inch of the space within the formation. This person was none other than a protective talisman refined by an old ancestor of the Kong clan. It contained a trace of the peak divine Emperor Old Ancestor's origin. If Kong Chong wasn't the most outstanding disciple of this generation in the Kong clan and was likely to become the Kong clan's master in the future, he probably wouldn't be able to get this protective talisman. Moreover, this talisman was indeed worthy of having the effect of stabilizing the universe. Once it was used, its power was infinite. Although it was only a trace of the origin energy of a peak divine emperor, the power it displayed was still above the power of the stars that Fang Qingshan gathered using the Zhodian star array. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.